Chapter 895. The dark night flowing light sword ignited with raging flames of twin flame flashes as it spiraled towards the group. They were all secretly delighted. Experienced had already opened the party channel and was ready to send out the good news of victory. It hit. The first player who was hit by Gu Fei had a hard time not to shout out in excitement. Seeing his health drop, he was unprecedentedly excited. He stared at Qianli's drunk without blinking, eagerly waiting for the white light to bloom. Experienced knew that it wouldn't be so easy. He had appraised Qianli's drunk and knew that he was wearing an exquisite belt that increased his maximum health and also had health regeneration. This kind of equipment shouldn't appear on a mage, but Qianli's drunk just had to wear it. Experienced didn't have any complaints. Thinking about this guy's close combat style that went against normal mages, it was reasonable for him to have equipment that increased his survivability. However, this equipment gave them a lot of trouble. Reflective equipment had to establish two aspects of data. One was the probability of reflection, and the other was the degree of reflection. No matter how high the reflection was, it couldn't be accumulated to 100%. They tried their best to scavenge this type of equipment from the main cities, but the highest number they got was only 61%. This was already at the cost of a portion of the reflection rate. After all, they only had so much equipment. If the probability was high, then the degree would be low. If the degree was high, then the probability would be low. Although the players still felt that double attribute equipment with high probability and high degree of reflection was useless, from the perspective of the system, it was an exquisite attribute, so the drop rate wasn't high. Experienced Wind and Frost's reflection team wanted as high a degree of reflection as possible. They would talk about the probability later. This was because they had a lot of people on the field at the same time. Qianli's drunk had always been attacking a bunch of people, so he should have triggered something. As for the damage that Wind and Frost had estimated from the 1,000-mile drunkenness, 61% of the reflected damage wasn't enough to kill him. It was because of this belt. However, if he could trigger two people, then 61% damage would definitely kill him. Therefore, in the end, when Qianli slashed down in a circle, they were only afraid of one situation, and that was that only one person was triggered. This situation was even more unlucky than not triggering a single one, because this exposed their strategy, but they did not manage to kill Qianli in a drunken stupor. For this reason, they had conducted many experiments before finally adjusting to the current combination of probability and degree. If they just recklessly increased the degree of the reflex, then the highest they could reach was 71%. Unfortunately, this was still not enough to kill Qianli. Therefore, after sacrificing part of the probability, there were several times in the experiment when only one person's reflex was triggered. The final ratio of probability and degree had been tested in practice. Therefore, even though there was such an unstable factor, everyone was still full of confidence. Now that he saw Qianli drunk's big move, he felt that victory was in sight. Experienced Wind and Frost was very clear about the effect of the reflected damage. The moment the reflection occurred, the player who was hit would have a flash of blood. However, with Qianli's drunk's skill, if he slashed several people with his sword, it would be impossible to see who his reflection was triggered on. However, at this moment, Experienced Wind and Frost could see clearly, because when Qianli's drunk slashed the first person, blood had already appeared. It's only the first person, and it's already triggered. Experienced Wind and Frost was excited. During the experiment, someone had proposed a hypothesis: what if he noticed the first time it was triggered, and then stopped attacking? Therefore, after putting it into practice, everyone realized that this was only a theoretical possibility, because a person's reaction speed was not that fast. This was a foolproof plan in everyone's hearts. Now that they saw the blood appear, Experienced Wind and Frost was so excited that they wanted to write down the message, but then they felt that the scene in front of them was a little strange. When they came back to their senses, Experienced Wind and Frost was immediately stunned on the spot. What happened was very simple, but this simple thing was something that Experienced Wind and Frost thought was impossible. After Qianli's drunk triggered the first reflected damage, the night streak immediately stopped, and the following players were not hit at all. Then, Experienced Wind and Frost heard Qianli's drunk laugh. "You're playing this again." Experienced Wind and Frost felt as if their hearts had stopped beating. Why? They had simulated the same scene countless times. No matter if it was their reaction speed, agility, or strength, no matter who it was, no one could immediately stop attacking when they triggered the reflected damage. Why was Qianli able to do it? Where was the inertia? Was there no inertia in his body? Experienced Wind and Frost was stunned, and so were the players in the reflection group. They had gone through many simulations, but they had never practiced what to do after Qianli's drunk slashed them, because this was something that should not have happened. They felt as if they were waiting for the butterfly update every night before midnight, but the update did not appear. Experienced Wind and Frost was numb, stunned, and slow. The moment Gu Fei stopped his attack, he had already proved to everyone that his reaction was correct. Next, his reaction was as fast as ever. He put the sword back into his pocket, and took out his homemade flying hook. This type of soft weapon did not exist in the game, and Gu Fei's homemade weapon naturally could not cause any damage, so he rarely used it as a weapon. However, this didn't mean that Gu Fei wasn't proficient in these types of weapons. Gu Fei had studied all kinds of weapons, but bows and rattan tiles were his weakness. What he was most proficient in, aside from swords, knives, and white weapons, was this set of soft weapons. At this time, the lightning formation behind him had disappeared. Gu Fei took a step back, and at the same time, he threw the flying hook in his hand. How could the players from the Reflex team understand this? They did not even know what Gu Fei was trying to do, and they only saw him throwing something at them. One of them instinctively dodged, but their team leader quietly said angrily, "What are you dodging?" That person immediately reacted. What were they dodging? They were here for Qianli to kill. However, Qianli had clearly seen through their strategy, so why would he still attack them? At this time, Experienced Wind and Frost finally came back to their senses. The plan to rely on reflex to kill Qianli had failed, but at this time, Qianli's HP had been reduced by more than half, so there was still a chance that they could take advantage of. Attack! There is no need to be afraid of him. Attack! Experienced Wind and Frost shouted. The people from the Reflex team had an epiphany. At this time, Qianli did not dare to attack them, so it was the best time for them to bully Qianli. They could completely do whatever they wanted. Attack! The team leader gave the order, and the players from the Reflex team pounced forward like hungry tigers. However, how could these people with high HP have the speed of Gu Fei? They saw Gu Fei weave through them, and the rope in his hand continued to fly. No one knew what he was doing. They could only see the rope swaying back and forth, and they couldn't even see where it was flying to. They couldn't even take the initiative to hit it. They couldn't hit it, and they wanted to reflect it, but it didn't attack them. The players from the Reflex team quickly became dispirited, and they could only feel depressed. Experienced Wind and Frost quietly watched the battle, and began to quietly deploy the other players. Although the players from the Reflex team were unable to kill Qianli's drunk, they were able to control him well. Qianli did not dare to attack them, and he was swinging something in his hand as if he was jumping a rope. Experienced Wind and Frost quickly woke up from his disappointment, and he hoped that he could seize the opportunity that was hard to come by. The players immediately began to move under Experienced Wind and Frost's orders. Experienced Wind and Frost wanted to quickly surround Gu Fei while the players from the Reflex team were entangled with him. The players moved quickly, and the players from the Reflex team had also made a huge breakthrough. They continued to work hard, and finally forced Gu Fei into a corner. The team leader was ecstatic. He raised his great sword and was about to slash down, but he felt that he was stopped by some force. The guy next to him cried out in pain and bumped into him. "What are you doing?" The team leader was shocked, and he was already bumped into by this person. Immediately after, there was a second ouch, and another player fell to the side as if he was possessed. The team leader calmed down and looked, and only then did he realize that they had all been entangled by the rope at some point in time. How did they do it? The team leader was about to break down. They had all been entangled together without realizing it. Thus, when he raised his arm, he knocked over the person next to him. The person who was knocked over would drag down the next person, and then the next person would be knocked over. This Qianli was drunk, and no one knew what kind of slipknot he had made. The members of the reflex team tumbled tighter and tighter, and soon they were all in a ball. They were all covered in dirt, and they went to look for the end of the rope. Experienced Wind and Frost was also shocked to see these guys fall into a ball by Gu Fei's magic, but his plan was still completed. While Gu Fei was entangled with the players from the reflex team, he had already locked him in the street. The roof behind Gu Fei was in flames, and Experienced Wind and Frost was actually directing the mage to bombard that place continuously, to prevent Gu Fei from teleporting to the roof. Experienced Wind and Frost had already considered all these details. Once Qianli is drunk, you won't be able to escape, Experienced Wind and Frost shouted out. As he finished his arrangements, he also called for reinforcements. Their people were in this area, and soon they would have a thicker force piling up on the street. "Oh, you think I won't be able to kill my way out?" Gu Fei said. "I'm not sure about that, but I'm sure that if you kill your way out of here, your PK value will undoubtedly be over 30, Experienced Wind and Frost said. "Looks like this is unavoidable." Gu Fei looked at the blocked streets and sighed. "When the system guards move out, and we work together to stop them, what do you think your chances of winning are?" Experienced Wind and Frost wasn't afraid to say his plan. "Looks like I'll have to, archers." Experienced Wind and Frost waved his hand, and the archers on his left and right shot out arrows. "You want to teleport?" Experienced Wind and Frost sneered when he saw Gu Fei dodge the arrows. "No, I want to drag you down with me." Gu Fei rushed towards Experienced Wind and Frost. Lightning formation. Experienced Wind and Frost waved his staff, followed by a flaming 3,000 layers of flames and falling fire wheel. He didn't throw them into the lightning formation, but at his feet. However, the moment the flames rose, he had already teleported away. In the lightning formation, there were other mages who had already cast spells. This was all part of Experienced Wind and Frost's plan. The lightning formation couldn't trap Qianli the drunkard's movements. It was only used to block Qianli the drunkard's vision. If Qianli the drunkard teleported out of the formation, he would fall right into the two fire spells that Experienced Wind and Frost threw out. Experienced Wind and Frost's attacks weren't bad either. He believed that these two spells would be enough to kill Qianli the drunkard, who didn't have much health left. Qianli the drunkard is finally going to die, right? Just as he was thinking about this, a strange yet familiar feeling suddenly appeared on his body. He looked down and found that his body was glowing with a bloody light, and in the blink of an eye, his life had reached the bottom. This. Experienced Wind and Frost had just said this word when he felt everything in front of him disappear. When the light came back, he saw the familiar Mage Academy in his hometown. Reflected damage. It was the reflected damage that killed him. How did this happen? Experienced Wind and Frost had returned to his hometown, so naturally, he was automatically removed from the team. While everyone was frantically asking for information, Experienced Wind and Frost sent a message to the reflex team leader. "What's going on?" "Qianli the drunkard pushed us into the lightning formation. We wanted to take off our equipment, but it's too late. We're all stuck." The reflex team leader was very depressed. Reflex didn't mean that they wouldn't take damage. At this moment, their team was completely wiped out, but everything that had happened before was still vivid in their minds. The moment the lightning formation fell and the mages attacked, they all thought that Qianli the drunkard was dead for sure. Who knew that Qianli the drunkard's teleportation didn't go forward, but instead retreated to the back of their group? This is the only way he can live a little longer. Just as the reflex team members were thinking that, Qianli the drunkard's palm had already condensed lightning, and he pushed it towards them. Is he trying to kill himself? Some people thought, but those who were attacked realized that the attack was extremely light. Even though there was no damage, it didn't affect the effect of the skill. The thunder palm pushed them. That's right, It was them, not just any one of them, because they had been wrapped up into one. Although they had been trying, they still hadn't found a clue. With so many people, it was theoretically impossible to push them. However, the thunder palm was a spell, and spells did not follow the principles of physics. The group of people moved. Although they moved slowly, and although they did not move far, they still could not resist being pushed into the thunder light array. They were already very close to the thunder light array. They were attacked, and they suddenly realized the problem. But it was all too late. They were all dead, and in the process, even they didn't know how many people had died. Chapter 896. Weathered Frost was puzzled, very puzzled. Even if the Reflection Team members were pushed into the lightning formation, he shouldn't have died. That was because the Reflection Team wouldn't reflect long-range attacks. Weathered Frost and the others naturally had a detailed understanding of the setting of this attribute. However, no one cared about the question that Weathered Frost was struggling with. Everyone was more concerned about whether or not Qianli had died from getting drunk. Weathered Frost didn't know, and the Reflection Team members who had the heavy responsibility of killing Qianli didn't know either. They wanted to kill Qianli, but in the end, they were the ones who died. Weathered Frost looked at his losses and couldn't help but wail. He was extremely depressed. After dying, he had actually dropped 2 levels. This was because he now had an additional 3 PK points. Without a doubt, these PK points belonged to the Reflection Team members. They were pushed into the lightning formation and bombarded with spells. Not a single one of them survived, and 3 of them lost their PK points to Weathered Frost. Then, Weathered Frost himself died, and dropped 2 levels. How unlucky! Weathered Frost was depressed. Not only had he been killed for no reason, but he had also died with PK points. What was even more tragic was that there was no one to comfort him. All the important figures could think of was to find out how the plan had failed and whether Qianli had died after getting drunk or not. Qianli hadn't died from getting drunk? Weathered Frost also wanted to know. He gritted his teeth and wanted to know. He hurriedly contacted the players present, but the result was even more depressing. 1,000 Miles Drunk didn't die. He didn't get involved in PvP, but after killing a bunch of them, he casually left. There was no problem with the encirclement that Weathered Frost had set up. The problem was that outside reinforcements had suddenly arrived and easily rescued Qianli from getting drunk. There was another piece of news that made Weathered Frost feel depressed. The Reflection Team had been pushed into the lightning formation, but he was the only one who had died. Other people's Heavenly Flame Wheel and Fire Tree 1000 Layers Flames were undoubtedly long-range spells. Could it be that his lightning array wasn't a long-range spell according to the system's judgment? But this definitely wasn't a close combat spell. The only meaning behind Wind and Frost's death was that he had a completely new understanding of his own skill, lightning array. Wind and Frost wanted to cry, but no tears came out. What should we do now? He had already answered the inquiries from the big shots. He had briefly explained the process, and no one was angry after hearing it. It was impossible to stop attacking the moment the reflected damage was reflected. This was the answer they collectively came up with in the process of practice. But now, Qianli was so anti-human when he was drunk, and he did it. What else could they say? This could not be said to be the responsibility of those who had experienced hardships. He's a cheat, he's definitely a cheat. Qianli's supporters were getting more and more. Feng Shuang, where are you now? Someone finally expressed his concern for Feng Shuang's current situation. Where's my hometown? Do you have a scroll to pass through? The man asked. Yes, but we got it from Yunteng. Wind and Frost said. Buying the scroll from Yunteng was their plan. They purposely asked for 20 scrolls with the same coordinates, and made it look like they had gathered a group of people to reach Cloud City together. Now it seemed like the other party had fallen for it, but Qianli was still unable to deal with it. That can't be used for now. The other party hurriedly said. I know. Wind and Frost said. The coordinates on the scroll were currently the position that Very Overpowered was defending. Teleporting here was like sending a sheep into a tiger's mouth. Wait a moment or find another scroll. We'll deal with it as soon as possible. The other party told Wind and Frost. What happened to Qianli's side, in the end? Wind and Frost really did not want to mention this name at this time. Sigh, they said some people came and helped him break through. This Very Overpowered really did have some external help. However, we can't overturn the situation right now. 1,000 miles drunk is also restricted by his PK points. We've bought some time. Now, we're organizing our attacks. Let's take down this group of people first. Then you guys can do it. I'll come over after I find a scroll. Wind and Frost sighed. Not being able to kill Qianli's drunk was still a big problem. At this time, he could only take one step at a time. Wind and Frost thought about it as he headed towards the direction of the main city's mailbox. He had contacted some teleportation scroll sellers. Although they hadn't reached an agreement yet, he still had to go to the mailbox to pick up the goods. Hey, the person in front. Suddenly hearing someone call out to him, Wind and Frost didn't think too much of it. He just casually turned his head. After replying, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. Very wrong. So he turned his head again. The black-robed mage, the purple-black sword, this. Wind and Frost directly teleported a few meters away and started running. He looked left and right to see if there were any forks in the alley. Use the terrain, I have to use the terrain. This is my main city, I have to use the terrain to get rid of him. Wind and Frost's heart was beating wildly. He tried his best to explore the surrounding terrain. At this time, even if there was a mouse hole, he would probably jump into it without hesitation. Gu Fei was left a few meters behind, but he wasn't worried at all. Teleportation was useless. The opponent was just a normal mage, or rather, a normal mage. In terms of movement speed, the difference between them was like heaven and earth. It was only a matter of time before he caught up. Gu Fei chased after him with large strides. Wind and Frost ran while looking back from time to time. He saw Qianli closing in on him in a drunken state, but he couldn't find any terrain that he could use. Just as he was panicking and didn't know what to do, he suddenly saw a familiar face in front of him. Wind and Frost froze for a moment, then suddenly became ecstatic. What was this place? This was his hometown. Was being familiar with the terrain his only advantage? Of course not. This city was filled with his friends, his acquaintances. Xiao Qi! Wind and Frost shouted as he thought of this. The acquaintance looked over when he heard the voice. Seeing Wind and Frost, he immediately laughed. Wind and Frost, why are you running? Help me, I'm being chased. Wind and Frost shouted. Are you kidding me? Xiao Qi's full name was Xiao Qi Qiao. She was an assassin. Although she wasn't at the top of the world rankings, she was still a famous expert in this main city. At this time, she was leading a dozen people and was about to form a party to level up. But then she saw Wind and Frost frantically shouting for help. Xiao Qi Qiao didn't believe it at all. Wind and Frost was an important figure in their guild. He was very popular in their main city. Who would be so blind as to cause trouble for him? But in the next second, Xiao Qi Qiao realized that this wasn't a joke. Wind and Frost was running in panic, but there really was a person leisurely chasing after him. Why was it leisurely? It was because that person's speed was completely disproportionate to Wind and Frost. He casually ran and caught up. How could he not be leisurely? Wind and Frost, come here. Xiao Qi Qiao's expression immediately became serious. He was a great master who had experienced hardships, but now he was being chased all over the street, screaming without any grace at all. This guy who was chasing him naturally had a powerful background. But in their main city, who could reach this level? Xiao Qi Qiao couldn't think of anyone. And this person that was getting closer and closer, Xiao Qi Qiao was also sure that she didn't know him. This was strange. She couldn't say that she was familiar with all the famous experts in the main city, but she had at least seen them face to face before. Who was this person? Be careful, it's Qianli drunk. Wind and Frost gave her the answer. Qianli drunk? Qiao Qi Qiao was puzzled. Cloud City's Qianli drunk is very powerful. You deal with him for a bit, I'll call for more people. His PK points are very high right now, so he should have some misgivings. A person who had gone through hardships was panicking, but his mind was still clear. 1,000 miles drunk had actually chased him to his hometown so quickly. He definitely wouldn't have had the time to clear his PK points. He probably still had more than 20 points. Qiao Qi Qiao had at least a dozen people here. Did he have the guts to kill them all? If he hurriedly used his home advantage to call for reinforcements and surrounded him while he was PKNG, how would he be able to save him this time? Qianli drunk, you're too careless. Just thinking about it caused Weathered Frost to grow even more excited. He began to crazily send out messages to his friends list. Players from the guild, players from the outside world, male and female, online and offline. In any case, he had sent out messages to all of them. He had even sent out messages to the major players of Cloud City. These people were completely confused. They all sent messages asking Weathered Frost what he was doing. Qianli drunk? At this time, Qiao Qi Qiao had already led a group of people to block the street. They were vaguely surrounding Gu Fei. At a glance, it was obvious that they were a group of friends that often leveled together. Yes. Who are you? Gu Fei was very polite. I'm Qiao Qi Qiao, you don't know me. Qiao Qi Qiao knew that her fame was far from reaching the world. After a simple introduction, she immediately said, Wind and Frost is a good person. How did he offend you? Qiao Qi Qiao was also a quick-witted person. As soon as she saw Wind and Frost come over, she hurriedly called for reinforcements. She had more than a dozen people, and he was only calling for him to deal with them. Moreover, his tone was quite forceful. She reckoned that this Qianli drunk really was as strong as the rumors said. Qiao Qi Qiao was proficient in online games and YY novels. She had often seen this kind of gorgeous strong person. As a result, she didn't have the slightest bit of confidence in having more people on her side. It's not a personal grudge. Gu Fei said. Then? It's probably self-defense. Gu Fei said. The group of people looked at each other in dismay. Chasing people all over the street, who would believe him if he said it was self-defense? This doesn't seem like it. Qiao Qi Qiao said. Gu Fei was about to answer when suddenly a female voice came, What's going on? Why are you all chatting? Where's the target? Did you lose him? Everyone looked towards the direction of the voice. A girl dressed in red was rushing over at high speed. She hadn't even arrived in front of them yet she was already firing off a barrage of questions. I'm here. Gu Fei said. Then hurry up. Why are you so long-winded? Slender Waist Dance said. Let's begin. Gu Fei nodded. He waved his sword and shouted, Wanted mission. It's nothing. Make way. If you want to chat, wait. Butterfly Knot, yesterday's chapter made a mistake. The thing that increased Gu Fei's HP wasn't the belt. It was the necklace, Wind's Protection, from the Wanted Mission series. I misremembered. Cough, did anyone notice? I don't think so. Chapter 897. Frost, is this a wanted quest? Qiao Qi Qiao turned around and asked Frost. Drunk Qianli's passion for wanted quests was world famous, but Qiao Qi Qiao didn't understand why he would come all the way here. However, wanted quests were also set up by the system, so there was no enmity between players. Of course, enmity between players was a different matter. Wanted quest my ass. If he wanted to hunt me down, why would he need help? Frost saw through the crux of the matter. If drunk Qianli really wanted to hunt him down, he alone was more than enough. Why would he need help from a woman? This red-clothed thief looked very valiant. She was probably the slender-waist dance who was said to have a good relationship with drunk Qianli. The situation was clear. Drunk Qianli used the wanted quest to lock onto his coordinates, and then slender-waist dance delivered the fatal blow. The wanted quest was just a way for them to track his position. He saw through it. Slender-waist dance said. Then I can only admit it. But I said the wanted quest was for everyone's good. Gu Fei said. Oh. Qiao Qiqiao was still trying to buy time. Because no one wants to drop a level. Gu Fei said. Arrogant. Qiao Qiqiao thought this, but she said, that's true. Then how about we stop fighting and go home? Yeah, you go home. Gu Fei said. Everyone go home. Qiao Qiqiao laughed. Wasting time was getting more and more pointless. What nonsense are you talking about? Slender-waist dance finally couldn't hold it in anymore. She pulled out her dagger and rushed out. You don't have enough PK points, right? Leave this to me. I can still deal with a few. Gu Fei checked his PK points and said, don't run. Ha ha ha, how is he going to run? Fly. Slender-waist dance laughed. In her eyes, Frost's speed was nothing. She could even run a few hundred meters. At this time, Feng Shuang, who had experienced many hardships, was somewhat embarrassed. How he wanted to take advantage of Qiao Qiqiao's help to block the attack and escape. But doing so would be too dishonorable. He was too ashamed to do such a thing. He could only grit his teeth and roar, let's do it. After saying that, he took 2 steps forward and waved his staff. Gu Fei immediately reminded Slim-Waist Dancer, be careful of his skill. That skill was, of course, referring to the lightning array. Gu Fei had already explained the characteristics of this skill to her when she brought the slender-waist dance along. Don't block my way. Slim-Waist Dance yelled and used her best move, sprinting and changing direction. Qiao Qiqiao was a main city level expert, but her companions were all average players. Some were good, some were average, and some were bad. There was a huge gap between them and Slender-Waist Dancer. After Slender-Waist Dance ran in a zigzag line, she stabbed 3 people. The 3 people's faces were pale. Clearly, they had never seen a player with such high damage. Today was an eye-opener. In terms of movement speed in the game, other than Blink, Swift-Waist Dance was the best. Even Wind and Frost's Thunder Array was left behind by her. Clearly, even an expert like Wind and Frost had underestimated Thin-Waist Dance's speed. The formation that Qiao Qiqiao and her companions had set up didn't do much to stop her. They were already lucky that they didn't die in the process. Just like that, Slender-Waist Dance ran in front of Feng Shuang and stabbed him with her sword. Feng Shuang staggered and almost fell to the ground. Looks like you alone are enough. Gu Fei's opponent also wanted to stop her, but he teleported over and stood beside Slender-Waist Dance in front of Feng Shuang. Nonsense. I only brought you here to show me the way. Slender-Waist Dance wasn't very proud. She had only killed a mage, so what? Slender-Waist brandished the knife and was about to stab Feng Shuang, but Gu Fei suddenly grabbed her wrist. What? Slender-Waist Dance asked. There's PK value. You dropped 2 levels at once. If you drop more, you'll be level 39. It's quite pitiful. Gu Fei said. You can't do it. Stop messing around. Who in this world has killed more people than you? Who knows how many people you've killed have dropped below level 40? Slender-Waist Dance said. The situation is different. There's no need. Gu Fei said. Then what do we do? Slender-Waist Dance said. Go to jail. Gu Fei waved his hand and left with Feng Shuang's astonished gaze. Slender-Waist Dance was flustered and exasperated. Then why did I come here? You insisted on coming. Gu Fei said. Slender Waist Dance had heard that Gu Fei was going to run to a distant city to kill a target. She felt that it was very exciting and insisted on coming. Qiao Qiqiao's team was in a daze. They had wanted to help, but they didn't seem to be able to do anything. The two people in front of them had casually passed through their obstructions. Feng Shuang was killed just like that. They didn't even get to say goodbye. The only thing they could be happy about was that it really was a bounty quest in the end. He didn't need to drop below level 40. Qiao Qiqiao even sent a message to Feng Shuang, but she couldn't contact him. This meant that this was the truth. But now, what should they do? Take revenge for Feng Shuang, or, let's go. Qiao Qiqiao was still in a daze when she saw Qianli wave his hand and leave with that woman. This. Qiao Qiqiao was dumbstruck. She seemed to have done something, but at the same time, she didn't seem to have done anything. Just what was going on? Gu Fei left, but he wasn't in a hurry to return to Cloud City. At this time, his PK points were quite high. It was rare for him to come to a city, so it was only natural for him to clear them. At this time, the scene in Cloud City was completely different. Sword Without Oath was desperately defending the city, but in the end, the number of people was decreasing. He didn't know about Gu Fei causing a ruckus outside. He only felt that the pressure was getting heavier and heavier. Messages urging for reinforcements were sent out as soon as they could. Those who were online had already expressed that they were rushing over. Sword Without Oath could only pray in his heart. It's only a matter of time before we take them down. Someone said in the party channel. Feng Shuang died and left the party. However, they didn't immediately choose a new commander to replace him. Currently, if there were any problems, they would discuss it. The situation was already under their control. There weren't any sudden situations that required them to immediately make a decision. What about Qianli? When this question was brought up, everyone went silent again. When Qianli finished clearing his PK points would probably come back. What should they do when that happened? Were they just going to watch him kill 29 people and clear his PK points? Was he going to treat them like a supermarket? Maybe that's all we can do. Brace ourselves and kill these people first. That way, we'll be able to answer to Ying Qi, right? Someone said. If we can't deal with Qianli, will Ying Qi be satisfied? Another person said. He probably won't be satisfied. If we can't kill Qianli, how many points do you think we'll get for this mission? Another person said. Everyone went silent again. They all had a feeling that if Qianli didn't die from drunkenness, then they wouldn't be able to kill very overpowered. They were all gaming experts and understood this situation very well. As long as there was an expert that didn't fall and didn't give up, then the guild would eventually stand up again. This probably wouldn't be Ying Qi's goal, right? His goal was obviously to disband the very heaven-defying society, completely and utterly disband. There's a group of people coming from the West Street. In the silence, someone suddenly sent an enemy report. The important figures all received the reports from their subordinates and then took them out to discuss. How many people are there? Someone asked again. In the time that Wind and Frost wasn't here, he and level 1 hypothermia made more decisions and orders. A few dozen people. They've already started fighting. The important figure who was in the West Street replied. There are people coming from the east. There are people coming from the north as well. There are enemies coming from the 2 south streets at the same time. Wait, there are people coming from the east. West, north, news of the same kind suddenly came in one after another. The important figures were at a loss. They even suspected that it was because their subordinates were mixed together, so they made repeated reports about the same place. But in reality, their arrangements for this mission had consciously prevented this kind of situation from happening. Since the start of the battle, there hadn't been any repeated reports. But what was going on now? Why were there suddenly so many people? With just a casual estimate, one could tell that this number was already much more than the number of heaven-defying people. Very overpowered. Could there be some hidden allies? Someone was surprised. That's impossible. We've already fully understood the situation of Cloud City's forces. Let's not talk about that. What's the situation now? They're coming at us fiercely. They have more people than us. I can't hold them off much longer. Someone shouted. I'm in danger too. Bad news came one after another. Many streets couldn't hold on any longer. And Sword of No Oath and the others who were originally trapped in the middle had finally arrived. They immediately turned from defense to offense and actively responded to the outside reinforcements. The situation isn't right. Very wrong. Level 1 Hypothermia said. We have to retreat. Someone strongly supported this view. Scrolls? Break out? Someone asked. Let's try breaking out of the encirclement first. Someone suggested. It wasn't a good idea to keep using these scrolls. In the blink of an eye, the 20,000 gold given buying Qi was almost all used up. Yet, they still hadn't seen any progress in their mission. Instead, they were losing people one after another. Did they block all the streets? Someone asked. Sigh, we shouldn't have called back our scouts. Someone was annoyed. After their plan to kill Qianli's drunk failed, they cherished the small amount of time they had gained from the sacrifice of more than 20 people. They gathered all their members and wanted to eliminate the enemy as soon as possible. The strengthening of their members was quite obvious, but they didn't expect the enemy to suddenly have so many reinforcements. Based on the information they received, it was obvious that they were being attacked from both inside and outside. Wait, your people should coordinate with mine. Those on the east side, come to XXX Street. There's no one here yet. The south side is completely blocked. Is there anyone with a weaker defense? There were many voices in the team channel. Everyone was trying to find a way to break out of the encirclement. However, following the sound of a system notification, a person was automatically removed from the team. Everyone finally realized that the severity of the situation was beyond their imagination. Even experts of their level could die in the chaos if they weren't careful. I'm teleporting. Someone in the team shouted. Teleportation wasn't just a method of retreat. It also meant that they wouldn't be able to provide any reinforcements to the enemy. Sending a message was also a kind gesture. I'm teleporting too. I'm teleporting too. Voices came one after another. As they teleported, their overall strength would decrease. For the remaining people, the burden would increase. However, who could care about others now? The later they teleported, the more dangerous the situation would be. The mass teleportation of hundreds of people was also a rare sight. At this time, Unsworn Sword was leading his group to vent their anger. Seeing that the other party had collectively fled, he felt extremely regretful. He had thought that the time to reap a huge profit had finally arrived. Who would have thought that this group of wealthy guests would actually use such a heroic method like teleportation scrolls? Those that could be interrupted were naturally interrupted. Those that could not be interrupted were left with no choice. Under Unsworn Sword's command, he mercilessly slaughtered the remaining pitiful players. When he saw Gu Xiaoshang leading the team, he happily went up. Xiaoshang, you've come to save me. You idiot, how did you end up like this? Gu Xiaoshang said. Don't mention it. The other side was prepared. That teleportation they set up was a trap. Unsworn Sword said. Are our losses big? Not small. I hope we can get some compensation after this. Unsworn Sword said. How? Gu Xiaoshang was confused. Unsworn Sword immediately realized that he had misspoken. He didn't reveal to Gu Xiaoshang that he was scheming for these experts' equipment. He was standing up for Cloud City, standing up for an extremely overpowered friend. This was the image he put up in front of Gu Xiaoshang. About that, we're killing these guys to avenge our fallen brothers. Unsworn Sword said. Gu Xiaoshang didn't ask any more and continued to lead his troops to fight. The two level 6 guilds had close to 2,000 people on the field. They had more people than their opponents, and their coordination was superior. The only difference was that they didn't have as many experts as the other side, but the other side's experts weren't as overpowered as Gu Fei, so what use was there? Reality proved that teleporting earlier was the wisest decision. The later they teleported, the more losses they would suffer. The big shots that escaped all contacted each other and compared their losses. Most of them lost half of their manpower. The big shots themselves also lost 8 people. Losing equipment was unavoidable with such a large number of casualties. Everyone was in despair. Just what kind of overpowered strength was this? Could it be that all the information they gathered was just a facade? Even now, the big shots still didn't know that they were fighting a muddled battle. Chapter 898. Offline. A certain big shot sent a private message. He felt that it was time for everyone to discuss this offline. Unfortunately, he didn't get a reply. Unfortunately, the person who sent the message was someone who had unfortunately died twice in this crusade. He wasn't in a good mood at the moment, and he was annoyed at every message he saw. Of course, this person didn't just send one message. There were others who replied, but they were all listless and asking for the opinions of others. Out of the 31 people, half of them weren't in the mood for some stupid offline meeting. Another person was still on the way, and the last person couldn't be contacted. It was their original commander, who had been forcefully cut off by the system. Everyone knew that it was because he had been sent to the dungeon, and they were all at a loss. I say, let's all go offline and have a chat. Hypothermia contacted everyone. He knew that everyone needed to calm down and comfort each other. Everyone was thinking about the setback that day in their respective cities. The more they thought about it, the more depressed they became. They had no place to talk about it. This offline meeting was actually a good thing. After all, they were all in the same boat. After spending a lot of effort, a bunch of people finally went offline and gathered together. The discussion group had been gathered for 10 minutes, but no one spoke. The atmosphere was lifeless. I say. Hypothermia spoke. He had a lot of health, so he didn't die this time. He successfully teleported away, so he naturally felt better than those who had died. Most of those who died bravely still had PK points. One could imagine how they died. As long as they had 1 PK point, it was equivalent to 2 levels. Everyone, cheer up. Those who were still able to comfort them were basically those who had survived. Sigh. There were sighs everywhere. We must get revenge. One of the brothers said angrily. This person was called Lemon Yellow, the king of tragedy among the 31 people. The first time he came, he was ambushed and killed. This time, he died again, and it was with PK points. He was the only one who had suffered the greatest loss. He had dropped 3 levels, and he was on the edge of the cliff of level 40. If he loosened his fingers, he would fall off completely. Of course. If we don't make a name for ourselves, we won't be able to explain it to our brothers. A big shot called Broom expressed his agreement seriously. Everyone understood what he was thinking. They had thought that this mission would be a profitable trip. Everyone had invited their best buddies and friends. Who knew that this would be the result? If he lost a level, he could at least take responsibility for it. Now that he had caused so many of his good friends to lose levels, he would be a little embarrassed to face them. This was especially so for those big shots who had dropped 2 or 3 levels. When they returned to the main city, they would be too embarrassed to greet people. I don't think there's any other way. Let's call for reinforcements. Everyone, call for reinforcements. Each of us will send 100 of them. Let's drown these heaven-defying fellows, someone suggested. 100 people, 25 scrolls, 50 scrolls for a round trip, who said we have to teleport? We're not in a hurry this time. Everyone, hurry up and walk. Let's set up a time and calculate our own route. We'll arrive at Cloud City together and register our accounts. If we don't flatten these heaven-defying fellows, we won't return to the city. Broom said. It seemed like he had already considered this matter carefully. This is too big of a commotion. The players in Cloud City won't come out to boycott us, right? Someone said. Why would they? The players in Cloud City will only hate the heaven-defying fellows more than us. Who knows, maybe they'll come out with us. Speaking of which, we should have contacted some of the powers in Cloud City. It's all because we were too confident. We thought that the heaven-defying fellows would be easy to deal with. Who knew that it would be so troublesome? This time, we'll set off while doing some public relations. I also have a few old friends in Cloud City. Even though we don't have much contact in the game, we can still talk to them. They can more or less help us. With this kind of relationship, I think all of our friends here have some, right? Everyone, let's move out together. Let's coordinate from the inside and outside. I don't believe that the heaven-defying fellows can be heaven-defying just because of Qianli's drunken fellows. Broom said. After a moment of silence in the group chat, someone suddenly said, Qianli's drunken fellows is indeed heaven-defying. All right, everyone knows. Broom was very annoyed. How could he not know that Qianli's drunken fellows' strength was heaven-defying? Saying that was just to look down on the enemy strategically and encourage everyone. In the end, there was someone who didn't understand the situation and wanted to tell the truth. Everyone, don't be impulsive. We still have some problems to solve. Low Temperature First Class saw that this group of people had the intention of immediately gathering troops to return to Cloud City, so he quickly reminded them. What problems? This ambush. If the other side is a bit more skilled and saw through our plan, I think it's not incomprehensible. But today's process is a bit weird, right? Low Temperature First Class said. Say it, say it. The big shots who had been down together for a day had more or less understood each other. Who had more ideas and who was a bit more impatient, they were somewhat aware of such more intuitive characteristics. Low Temperature First Class was obviously the more meticulous one and had more ideas. From the other side's posture of being surrounded and waiting for reinforcements, it's obvious that they didn't see through our plan. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so passive. Does anyone have any objections to this? Low Temperature First Class said. No objections. Everyone said. Then after this, very defying fellows gathered in such a short period of time. I think there are about 2,000 people. This is very different from the background of very defying fellows that we know of. Has anyone not thought of this? Low Temperature First Class said. Everyone immediately fell silent. It was such an obvious question, but no one had thought about it. If our judgment was wrong, then to what extent? This time, very defying fellows could gather 2,000 people. What about next time? Will it be 4,000, 6,000, or even 8,000? Is very defying fellows' foundation in Cloud City really as shallow as we thought? Right now, each of us has 100 people. Even if we gather all 3,000 people, we have already seen very defying fellows use almost 2,000 people. Just now, someone suggested to find people from Cloud City to coordinate from the inside and outside. Can anyone find someone that is absolutely reliable? Even the act of buying scrolls from Cloud Ting Studio became a loophole that very defying fellows exploited. Will our action of coordinating from the inside and outside be used by very defying fellows as well? Low Temperature said all this in one breath, waiting for the audience in the discussion group to give some reaction. This is indeed a big problem. Comrade Broom finally realized that he had not considered the problem thoroughly. Even if we have seen all of very defying fellows, there are still 2,000 people. I see that they are very skilled in coordination. Even if each of us brings 100 people, this temporary 3,000 people may not be a match for the other 2,000 people. Not to mention their familiarity with the terrain. The more people there are in a group battle, the more they will rely on the terrain. In the end, is there really nothing we can do about very defying fellows? What do you think, Low Temperature? Broom felt that low temperature wasn't just analyzing the problem to let everyone see the reality. After analyzing so much, he should at least have some ideas. Forming an elite team. Low temperature said. Elite team? That's right. Before, we always wanted to defeat very defying fellows in one go, but reality proved that before we thoroughly understand the depth of very defying fellows, it is too dangerous to do so. Because of this, we have suffered a lot of losses. So I suggest that we do not make such a big group operation. Everyone should each bring their own elite members to infiltrate Cloud City. Don't have any direct confrontation with them, just carry out scattered sneak attacks and assassinations. If you can't kill an expert like Qianli Drunk, then temporarily avoid him. Find the enemy's weakness and create panic and fear within their guild. Let the ordinary members of very defying fellows know that an expert like Qianli Drunk, not only can he not protect them, but he will also make them fall into this kind of situation where they are constantly being hunted. In this kind of situation, how can very defying fellows not disperse? After low temperature said so much, he went back and admired it himself. He felt that this policy was very correct. While waiting for everyone to respond, suddenly there was a system prompt. It was a system message from the discussion group. When he opened it, he saw that someone had applied to join. Name, Sandpaper. Low temperature was startled. This discussion group was set up when Feng Shuang was still in prison. This time, Feng Shuang was still in prison and couldn't get the news, so he couldn't come. In the end, this Sandpaper completed his long journey while everyone was executing the plan to beat him at his own game. Of course, this guy also received the group number that Feng Shuang sent to everyone when he created the discussion group. When he arrived in Cloud City, he found that everyone was offline, so he went offline to create this discussion group. When the sand printing paper was placed in a low temperature, all the important figures were startled. They had almost forgotten about this person. When they were being tossed and turned back and forth, this guy didn't change his original intention of walking to Cloud City. Now, he had finally reached the city. The important people obviously didn't like this guy. When they saw him enter, no one took the initiative to greet him. Hi, brothers. Sandpaper took the initiative to greet everyone. Low temperature seemed to be in charge of the group now. Seeing that no one was paying attention to Sandpaper, he had to go and greet him. You're finally here. Yes, I'm here. What about you guys? Sandpaper asked. Fuck us. I already died twice when you were playing around, and dropped 3 levels. Lemon Yellow said angrily. Yo, who's so cruel? Is it Qianli Drunk? Sandpaper asked. His words were neither fish nor fowl, making people feel that he was making sarcastic remarks. Lemon Yellow immediately became even angrier. What has this got to do with you? Didn't you say that you wouldn't participate in our group activities? It's not that I don't want to participate. I just haven't arrived yet. Sandpaper said. You still have the cheek to say that. Lemon Yellow roared. Sandpaper seemed to be calm. Now that I'm here, what's the next step? What's the next step? Low temperature couldn't do anything about this person, so he could only copy and send the message he had just sent. After reading it, Sandpaper immediately said, Great minds think alike, I think so too. Oh. No matter what, Low Temperature was still very welcoming of people who supported him. That's why the people I brought this time are all marksmen and assassins. Sandpaper said. But there are still some details that need to be considered. For example, how do you recognize an extremely overpowered person? Even though we've come into contact with them twice, I don't think I have much of an impression of them just based on memory alone. If they don't wear their guild emblem, then it won't be easy to recognize them. For example, in the previous battle, those guys didn't wear their guild emblems. Low Temperature said. This old fox, Unsworn Sword, knew that his opponents weren't to be trifled with, so he intentionally made sure that the ambushers didn't wear their guild emblems. He didn't want to attract a bunch of enemies like an extremely overpowered person. If it wasn't for the fact that he was afraid of being seen by an extremely overpowered person, Unsworn Sword would have made a bunch of fake extremely overpowered badges to wear. His little bit of cleverness had already been seen through by the Han family young master, but unfortunately, that was exactly what he wanted Unsworn Sword to do. Unsworn Sword had once again fallen into someone's trap, but he still couldn't help but feel proud. Everyone just has to do their best. Sandpaper said. Sandpaper, you seem very confident. What method do you have to share with everyone? Low Temperature said. Ugh, you said before that they don't wear their guild emblems, so doesn't that eliminate the people who do? If you compare their classes and levels, you can eliminate a few. Then pay attention to the faces that you've met before. These people and their companions could all be clues. Sandpaper said. I thought it was some good method. Lemon Yellow still didn't like Sandpaper. There are heroic methods, but I'm afraid you don't have the guts. Sandpaper said. I'm angrier than anyone right now. What wouldn't I have the guts to do? Lemon Yellow said. If you stand on the streets and yell for an extremely overpowered person to come out, who knows, maybe a few of them will come out for you to kill. Sandpaper said. Lemon Yellow was furious. This method was indeed possible in theory, and it was extremely heroic, but the problem was that he really didn't have the guts. He already said that he wouldn't make a big fuss this time, but in the end, he ran out arrogantly. He wasn't going to kill anyone, he was going to die. Low Temperature thought for a moment and said, I suggest that we split the operation into 2 steps. The first step is to completely confirm the identity of the extremely overpowered player. We'll use their level, class, and any other clues we can use. Then, we'll exchange information with each other. Once we have a complete grasp of the information, we'll proceed to the next step. How about that? That's right. That's more reliable. Let's make it a separate step, that'll make things a lot easier. For example, we can buy some people to help us identify the person. Sandpaper said. Chapter 899. Spend money to buy people. Everyone was startled when they heard this suggestion, it was something they hadn't thought of yet. It's just helping to find someone, there's no risk and no burden, I think a lot of people would be willing. Sandpaper said. This kind of person. First Hypothermia thought for a bit, maybe Ing-Chi can provide us. Suddenly mentioning Ing-Chi's name again, the big shots in the discussion group suddenly felt a bit uncomfortable. At this moment, not many people were still thinking about Ing-Chi's reward. In the process of the crusade, they had lost countless brothers, this had changed their attitude towards very defiant from active attack to passive revenge. Everyone felt guilty towards their brothers, they could give up on the promised reward from Ing-Chi, this was something they could do, but no one could face their friends who had dropped a level after that. Now that Ing-Chi's name suddenly appeared, many people finally realized their original intentions, they all felt like they were in a dream. Of course we should find Ing-Chi. Sandpaper, who had just arrived and had just started working, obviously didn't feel this way, he was still thinking about Ing-Chi's reward. Does anyone have any opinions? First Hypothermia didn't think of himself as the boss, he democratically asked for everyone's opinion. Most of the people didn't have any ideas, and First Hypothermia's analysis and Sandpaper's idea was indeed quite reliable, even Lemon Yellow who had a strong opinion on Sandpaper had nothing to say. If there's no objections, then let's go online now, I'll contact Ing-Chi, or have you already contacted Sandpaper? Of course. Sandpaper said. Looks like even if we all quit and you're the only one left, you still have the confidence to do this? First Hypothermia was surprised that Sandpaper was prepared for everything. We'll only know after we try. Sandpaper said. I hope you get drunk when you meet Qianli. Lemon Yellow clenched his teeth and said. Although he hadn't actually faced Qianli drunk before, it was obvious that he had already treated meeting Qianli drunk as the fiercest curse. Don't worry, if I meet him, I'll run faster than a rabbit. Sandpaper said. Useless. Lemon Yellow said. You have a bright future. I wish you luck. If you have a future, you must not run away. You must get drunk and have a death match with Chinli. I support you in spirit, said Ink Sandpaper. With a system notification, Lemon Yellow exited the discussion group and returned to the game angrily. First Low Temperature could only smile bitterly. In the end, he said to the crowd, if no one has any objections, let's go back to the game and pick our own members who are good at sneak attacks and assassinations. Everyone can decide the number. How do we come to Cloud City? What do you guys think? Let's just use a scroll. Let's get there as soon as possible so that Ian Sandpaper won't be alone and helpless. After all, there were honest people everywhere. Thank you. Towards such a reasonable person, Ian Sandpaper's attitude was also very harmonious. Let's go back and register our household registration first so that we don't have to run back and forth again, someone said. Damn, can't you say something more auspicious? Hurry up and spit, 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 spit. Immediately, someone was very dissatisfied with this brother's negative views. This is also just in case. Our people have always checked their residences along the way. Ian Sandpaper said. Everyone was relieved. At the same time, they realized that as long as no one argued, Ian Sandpaper's words were quite pleasant to listen to. First Low Temperature waited for a while. Seeing that no one had any objections, they finally came to a consensus. Then, everyone should go back to the game and prepare. If there are any problems, contact me again. Everyone said their goodbyes and returned to the game. They began to choose suitable people from their friends and family. But in the end, many of them were troubled. For example, First Low Temperature could find 20 agile players who were good at sneak attacks and assassinations. But what about himself? He was a tanky cleric who was slow. He couldn't do this job at all. Sneak attacks and assassinations didn't require a cleric. They were very mobile. If they couldn't win, they could just run. What was the point of having a cleric? Other than clerics, warriors and mages were also slightly embarrassed. They were all discussing in private. The team was formed, but what about ourselves? What should we do? Who knew? Everyone was getting more and more confused. At this time, in Cloud City, although Unsworn Sword was initially nervous after being surrounded, once reinforcements arrived, they immediately turned the situation around. In the end, the other side used a luxurious teleportation scroll to escape. These were peerless experts from a large number of main cities. Unsworn Sword thought in high spirits, completely forgetting that they had several times the number of people on their side. At this time, cleaning up the battlefield was quite rewarding. They also had to get rid of some people who were sneakily stuffing items into their pockets during the battle. Such a large guild was bound to have some people like this. If no one noticed, Unsworn Sword didn't have the time to care. At this moment, Unsworn Sword was grinning from ear to ear as he listened to his guild members bragging about the items they had picked up in the guild channel. He couldn't help but praise the other party's selfless spirit and look forward to receiving more such visitors. Guild leader, look at this. At this time, someone sent the information of a piece of equipment. It was a two-handed greatsword that could be said to be the current top level. Unsworn Sword nodded. Good. Very good. The more of these things, the better. Very overpowered people have arrived. At this time, someone sent a message to Unsworn Sword. I'll go over. You calculate the dropped equipment and the people who died this time. We'll split it later. Unsworn Sword said. Okay. Reflection Years nodded. Guilds had their own way of dividing the loot in this kind of collective operation. After operating for so long, they naturally had a system that the guild members believed in. Guild leader Unsworn, how is it? Sword Demon, Han Family Young Master, Brother Yu, and other very overpowered core players greeted Unsworn Sword with a tone of sympathy. Unsworn Sword had long since put away the wretched smile on his face after obtaining a large pile of equipment. Instead, he put on a righteous look and said, they want to cause trouble in our Cloud City. How can I let them get away with it? Everyone, don't worry, we've already killed them all. You didn't see how miserable they looked when they escaped. They were all using teleportation scrolls. Ha ha ha. Using teleportation scrolls to escape was indeed a sign of a dangerous situation. With how expensive these things were, players wouldn't be willing to use them unless they saw a 100% chance of losing a level. Of course, people like Gu Fei and the others who had already become rich were different. They were tycoons, not commoners, and definitely not poor people. Did you encounter any trouble? Han family young master smiled. Everyone was looking forward to Unsworn Sword's next performance. Trouble, there was a bit. The Han family brothers. The other side seems to have a bit of intelligence. They've already seen through you guys and know their teleportation location. This time, they purposely used it as bait to lure you guys over to ambush them. Instead, they surrounded you from the outside. Unsworn Sword said. Really? That's terrible. Han family young master was shocked. After watching Unsworn Sword's performance, everyone looked at Han family young master. They felt that Han family young master was exaggerating a bit. After all, this guy wasn't suitable for this kind of pandering. Especially for people like them who knew him inside out. Seeing Han family young master's reaction, they felt that he was still looking down on Unsworn Sword. Unsworn Sword didn't notice and continued, if you guys really came to defy the natural order, then it's going to be really bad. I saw that the other side had 800, no, maybe 1,000 people. They surrounded us so tightly that not even a drop of water could pass through. How many people did Unsworn Sword bring? Han family young master asked. Around 200 people. Ugh, but we reigning 4 seas has a deep foundation. Plus we have a powerful group of friends and family like Kai Yunjian. 1,000 people is nothing. Amazing. Han family young master nodded. Amazing, amazing. The surrounding people all agreed. Even the reigning 4 seas players next to Unsworn Sword were impressed. Look at our guild leader's spirit. He just casually added another 400 people without even blinking an eye. But guild leader Unsworn, don't be careless. The other side is a group of desperados who don't care about levels. I think they might make a comeback. Han family young master said. I'm waiting for them to come again. Today's battle, I'm still not satisfied enough. Unsworn Sword slung the great sword in his hand over his shoulder. I only killed 8 people. 8 people, that's a lot, right? Han family young master said. You're a guild leader, so you have to lead by example. Ha 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 ha. Unsworn Sword's heroic spirit soared to the sky. Then there's something I have to tell you. Han family young master said. Speak. Unsworn Sword's one word showed his decisive demeanor. Qianli Drunk just killed 29 PK points, and he's currently washing his PK points. His habit is to start from the highest PK points wanted mission. Han family young master said. Is that so? Unsworn Sword's smile was already stiff, that's why I always say, Qianli this, that, boss sword demon, What is that? What? Sword demon was finally unkind for once. Private chat, let's talk in private. Unsworn Sword quickly pulled Sword Demon to the side. Everyone snickered. Everyone knew what he was going to say. Of course, he was going to ask the kind and easygoing Sword Demon to help him ask for a favor, so that Qianli would be lenient when washing his PK points. But in reality, everyone knew that Gu Fei wasn't in Cloud City at this time. With this business trip, wouldn't he be able to wash his PK points back in the outer city? The Han family's young master just wanted to see the Sword of No Oath suffer. Looking at Unsworn Sword dragging Sword Demon and whispering to each other, Han family young master looked back at Brother Yu. How's your side? I've found everything that can be found. I've already sent it to Qianli. Brother Yu said. The other side won't fight us head on. They'll probably use some tricks like sneak attacks and assassinations to kill time. But this time, we're one step faster. These idiots, they're not good. Han family young master shook his head. Chapter 900. Lemon Yellow was an old player. He had a glorious past in the game and was doing quite well in the parallel world. After unremitting efforts and some luck, he was ranked 17th on the mage ranking. In his main city, Snowfrost City, he could be said to be the #1 mage, a big shot that everyone knew. However, all of this was already in the past. Today was the most tragic day in the history of Lemon Yellow's game. In just one day, all his hard work had gone to waste. He had already dropped 3 levels and was on the precipice of level 40. His beloved robe had also been dropped when he was killed for the second time. He had returned home in his underwear and had casually grabbed a tattered robe from a friend to wear to attend the meeting of the big shots. In the end, he had been angered by the fact that Sandpaper was late. The most tragic thing was that their actions were basically the same as Sandpaper's, which made Lemon Yellow want to vomit. But now, he couldn't even spit it out, because even this train of thought had reached a bottleneck. As requested, he invited a group of archers and thieves, but in the end, he realized that it was not convenient for him to participate in such an operation. Mages were a noble class. From the setting of their skills and the selection of their attribute points, they weren't suitable for this kind of shady business, unless they were like that Qianli who added agility in a wretched manner. As Lemon Yellow walked, she wanted to send a message to other important figures who probably had the same problem as her. Suddenly, she heard someone call out, "Lemon Yellow." Lemon Yellow turned around and sent a message. "Look who I am," said the man. Boring. Lemon Yellow wasn't in the mood to joke around. She glanced at him as she spoke. In the end, with just one look, Lemon Yellow immediately understood that his bad luck would continue. Today was really the most unlucky day he had ever been. Qianli was drunk. "Just thinking about you made me come. Are you a fucking summoned beast?" That was the last thought that flashed through Lemon Yellow's mind before he was killed. When they revived, it was cold and damp, but Lemon Yellow was excited. This was a dungeon, not a revival point. He checked his information again. His level was perfect. It turned out that he had been sent back to the dungeon by a wanted mission. Why? Why was this happening? Qianli was drunk. This idiot didn't want to kill him but wanted to kill him instead. Ha 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 ha, good luck hasn't left yet. It was finally here. Lemon Yellow laughed maniacally in the cell. He was still so happy even though he was in prison. From this, it could be seen that nothing was absolute. Everything had to be compared. For example, there was a small group of people who said that Butterfly was shameless, but compared to Baidu, Butterfly was pure, noble, peerless, and radiant. What's going on? Why are they in jail again? After Lemon Yellow left, one of the 2 men expressed his dissatisfaction to the other. The one who was dissatisfied was Slim Waist Dance, and the one who was dissatisfied was Gu Fei. He's already level 40. If he loses another level, it'll be a pity. Gu Fei said. Can you do it? Can you do it? When you come out, how can you not drop levels? Even I have dropped levels. Thin Waist Dance said. I've never dropped one. Gu Fei said. I'm pissed to death by you. Next time, I have to kill him. Otherwise, what's the point of me running around? Thin Waist Dance shouted. Provide scrolls? Gu Fei asked. I'm going to kill you. Thin Waist Dance was furious. Next stop, next stop. Gu Fei looked at the information brother you had sent him. Compared to the assassination that the higher-ups wanted to do, Gu Fei's assassination was too precise and on point. The only flaw was that it wasn't comprehensive enough. After all, most of the 31 people brother you hadn't found yet. There were also some who didn't have any PK value. For example, level 1 hypothermia. Brother, you found this cleric with high health and high recovery, but how could a cleric have PK value? Without PK value, the bounty license couldn't be used. Gu Fei couldn't find him, so he could only let him go. As for Lemon Yellow, he was one of the people who had died in the ambush. In this group battle, he was a sorcerer and had a bunch of PK targets. If he didn't become the target, who would? However, he was still happy with the ending. With PK value, if he had been killed again, it was hard to say if he would have the courage to continue playing. Unsmiler had been killed 10 times, but he was still stubbornly alive. That was in the realm of 20 to 30. If he wasn't discouraged after losing so many levels, then he was a person with great perseverance. After choosing his second target, Gu Fei's Thin Waist Dance took off again. This time, Thin Waist Dance was finally satisfied. This student had participated in the first ambush, but he had retreated in the second battle. Although he still had PK value from the battle, his level of 42 ensured that he wouldn't drop below 40. Therefore, he had the honor of dying in Thin Waist Dance's hands. Thin Waist Dance had been holding it in for a long time. He was so happy with this kill that before he died, he said, "What a pervert." Even if it was a game, to have such a smile on one's face when killing people was not perverted. Next. In pursuit of efficiency, Gu Fei immediately took off to the next stop. As for the scrolls, Brother Yu had prepared a set for them after finding out everyone's background. Brother Yu was very meticulous when it came to logistics. It was reassuring, but he was always neglected in a game that focused on combat. The next person's situation was the same as the previous one. He had died once and had PK value, but it wouldn't drop below 40. Obviously, he would be Thin Waist Dance's prey. But when the two found the coordinates, they went up to the roof and looked around, but they didn't see anyone. The experienced Gu Fei immediately concluded, inside. He knocked on the door. "Who is it?" The person inside asked. "It's me," Gu Fei said. "Who are you?" the person asked. Gu Fei didn't know how to answer, so he pushed Thin Waist Dance. Thin Waist Dance replied, "Beauty." The person immediately opened the door. When he saw Thin Waist Dance, he smiled, forgetting that the person who said, "I," was a man. He politely asked, "Beauty, what can I do for you?" So the beauty stabbed him, and blood dyed his stomach red. Before he could react, he was stabbed in the chest, and just like that, he was naked. Thin Waist Dance was very satisfied with her quick and efficient methods. Gu Fei sighed, "Idiot, you killed the wrong person. This isn't the target." But the target soon came out with a group of people. This was also an efficient big shot. He had already gathered people and was in the middle of a mobilization meeting, but someone came to him just like that. "Look, that's the one." Gu Fei pointed at Thin Waist Dance. "Who is it?" The person didn't notice Gu Fei and was still asking. "Beauty." Thin Waist Dance answered him and charged forward. Everyone was still smiling ambiguously. They mischievously thought that this was a beauty throwing herself at him. Although they didn't know the reason, they felt that a big shot would have no problem dealing with a female player. But what they didn't know was that this was the strongest female player in the parallel world, a female player who was even more skilled than many men. The big shot was in a tragedy. There was still a gap between first class and first class. Thin Waist Dance's skills weren't first class, but her equipment was definitely first class. This big shot was of the same class as her, but he was completely suppressed. Everyone was shocked. Their big shot didn't succeed in flirting with the beauty, and was easily killed by her. A bunch of people surrounded her. The gap between first class and first class wasn't as big as the gap between first class and perverts. The first class was surrounded and couldn't handle it. After all, the people that were gathered were all experts, not noobs on the side of the road. "What are you looking at? Hurry up and help." Thin Waist Dance saw that Gu Fei was still leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. She was furious. "Oh, I'm afraid that if I interfere, you'll say that I'm stealing your kill. Gu Fei said. Kill? The players who heard this were stunned. We are people, not monsters. But they didn't have time to explain or express their dissatisfaction. The perverts joined the battle and instantly fell. The ambushing experts were either archers or thieves, each with less health than the last. Gu Fei was the best at insta-killing them. In the end, all the thieves fell and the archers ran. Gu Fei was depressed. My PK value is back up again. Washington, Thin Waist Dance said. Right, the coordinates from before can still be used. Gu Fei said. The big shot who had just been cut by Thin Waist Dance dropped 2 levels. He was now 40, and he was so sad that he didn't want to walk out of the revival point. In the end, he didn't walk out. When he walked in, the man and woman came looking for him again. This time, he recognized that it was Qinli. He was furious. What else could he do at the revival point? Just as he was about to open his mouth to take advantage of him, Gu Fei teleported, got close, and used dual flame flash. Cold, damp, dungeon. This big shot's state of mind was different from Lemon Yellow. He originally thought that he was at an absolutely safe revival point, but who knew that the other party would use a wanted mission to take him in? He was depressed and angry, but no one listened to him. Without Gu Fei presiding over the city, the dungeons were mostly cold and quiet. 3 consecutive targets were easily completed. Thin Waist Dance finally got over her addiction and regained her smile. But at this time, the big shots finally had some reaction. The first target, Lemon Yellow, was in the dungeon and had no news. The second target only dropped a level and saw Qinli clearly. He immediately sent a message to all the big shots, Qinli Drunk has taken the initiative to attack, assassination has come knocking. Fuck. The big shots who heard the news were all terrified and angry. They were still organizing the assassination, but the other party had already taken the initiative to kill them. At this time, not to mention attacking Cloud City, everyone started to doubt their own safety. In the end, the 4th target went smoothly, but when it came to the 5th target, things started to get troublesome. After this brother found out that the others were either in prison or dead at level 40, he gathered all the helpers he could find and waited in the central plaza of their city. Gu Fei and Thin Waist Dance came, only to see a sea of people here. It was very lively. Aya, it's going to be hard to find people like this. Gu Fei said. What's going on? Thin Waist Dance looked around. What kind of gathering is this? Gu Fei guessed. Hey, what are you guys doing? Thin Waist Dance pulled someone over and asked. Beautiful women were welcomed by everyone, so this person immediately replied, Xiao Sheng, we're waiting for Qinli Drunk. This inhumane beast comes and goes like a ghost. I heard that he's coming to our city to commit murder, so we're waiting for him. Ha 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 ha, inhumane beast. Thin Waist Dance pointed at Gu Fei and laughed. Everyone looked at him. And Gu Fei's characteristics had long since been instilled into everyone here. As soon as they saw him, the plaza immediately became chaotic. How chaotic would it be if everyone suddenly rushed to one person's side? Just think about the scene of a celebrity meeting a bunch of fans. Gu Fei saw that the situation wasn't looking good. There were too many people and it was too chaotic. In such a disorganized situation, no matter how good his skills were, he might just be trampled to death in the chaos. Even if he killed one group of people and didn't dare to move forward on the second group, the people in the third and fourth group might push him forward on the second group, and then the fourth group would push him 3, 5 groups would push him 4, and then he would be pushed down. Run! Gu Fei pulled Thin Waist Dance and dodged. Thin Waist Dance was so fast that in the blink of an eye, she was pulling Gu Fei. In the blink of an eye, she was already gone. There was a bunch of pursuers behind Gu Fei. Some thieves and archers with full agility had already overtaken him. Gu Fei pulled out his sword and charged forward. Fortunately, the people in front of him were all archers and thieves. They didn't have the least health and basically couldn't take a hit from Gu Fei. Stepping on the white light of the corpses, Gu Fei moved forward. Those who were faster than him all fell under his sword. Those who were faster than him had to be muddle-headed to the front to take his sword. The players outside of the city had always had a vague understanding of Qianli Drunk's strength. This time, they got to know him on a large scale and felt that it was even more vague than before. Was he still human? Was he still a player? He was cheating. This was the only explanation that everyone could agree with. After getting rid of the pursuers, Gu Fei and Thin Waist Dance met up. Thin Waist Dance was still pointing at him and laughing. One moment, she called him inhumane, and the next moment, she called him a beast. She finally found something to make fun of. Gu Fei was still thinking about his target. He checked the coordinates and found that it was moving. However, he didn't know where it was going. All he knew was that it was getting further and further away from him. We can't kill this one, right? Thin Waist Dance asked. We can't kill it. It's too chaotic. Gu Fei said. But we can't just keep piling up with so many people. Thin Waist Dance said. It's fine if there's a lot of people piling up, but it's too chaotic. We need to organize and arrange things. Gu Fei grumbled. So you're saying that if we have an organization, we'll have a chance? Thin Waist Dance's eyes widened. Yeah, only with an organization can we find an accurate and effective opening. Gu Fei said. Now there's no opening. Thin Waist Dance didn't believe him. Of course there's an opening, but it's too chaotic. It's too chaotic. Gu Fei said. So what? Nothing wins. Gu Fei said. Bullshit. Thin Waist Dance said with disdain. You don't understand. Gu Fei didn't explain. He stuck his head out to take a look. There really wasn't anyone chasing after them. What do we do now? Wait or go for the next one? Thin Waist Dance asked. I don't think there's much difference. The other side already knows that we're coming, so they're all on guard. Gu Fei said. With so many people protecting them, how long will they have to protect them? Thin Waist Dance said. If they know my method, as long as they protect them until their PK points disappear, then they can just go and clear their PK points. Gu Fei said. Chapter 901. Gu Fei wasn't wrong. The other party already knew why he could find them. After all, Gu Fei wasn't like some experts who liked to keep a secret and use it at the critical moment. Gu Fei made it known to the whole city when the new function of the wanted license came out. It wasn't a secret, and it was easy to find out. There were so many meticulous guys among the 31 big shots. With such a high frequency of consecutive assassinations, they naturally figured it out quickly. However, there was one thing they couldn't figure out at the moment. How did Gu Fei get their names? After all, these big shots were all great experts. In such a chaotic battle, except for the clerics, none of them didn't have PK value. At this time, everyone was in danger. How could they know that Gu Fei only knew the names of some of them? At this time, everyone couldn't care about supporting each other. Fortunately, they were all in their own territory, and they all mobilized manpower and material resources to protect themselves as much as possible. Of course, this also included the judgment of Qianli's strength. In this aspect, there were some differences. The person Gu Fei just met was more exaggerated. This person already regarded Gu Fei's strength as infinite. He used all the connections he could find. What Gu Fei just faced was almost all the elites of the city. This was originally the private behavior of these big shots. Now that it had reached this point, it was a bit like a storm in the city. If he called for help, he should at least give a reason, right? If he wanted to prevent Qianli from getting drunk, he should at least give a reason, right? In the eyes of some experts, being hired by a studio to be a thug was very lowly behavior, but at this point, it couldn't be hidden anymore. These people despised him, but at this time, they still had to be friends. So they also stood up to stop Gu Fei. It was really impossible for Gu Fei to deal with so many people, so he could only flee. He thought that he was in a difficult situation, but he didn't know that along the way, he killed all the thieves and archers in the city. If he wasn't an expert, how could an ordinary person easily catch up to Gu Fei? This was really a vicious cycle. Originally, he wanted to stand up for the big shots, but now, he wanted to stand up for himself. At this moment, Gu Fei was still thinking of finding an opportunity to observe the actions of the big shots. Who knew that the thief and archer that he had just killed were already angry at this time? They were also calling their friends to seek revenge on Gu Fei. No matter how strong Gu Fei was, players wouldn't be able to swallow their anger if they didn't run into enough obstacles themselves. The players of Cloud City, especially the major guilds, had experienced this before. Together, Gu Fei and Slim Waist Dance counted the important person's coordinates and made a comeback. When they got closer, they saw that the person was heading out of the city. He could only be going to a more open area. When Gu Fei and Slim Waist Dance caught up to their tails, the players behind them also noticed them. The black and red were a little conspicuous. A large group of people immediately turned around, looking like they were ready for battle. The two sides were still 100 meters apart. Gu Fei shook his head and sighed. He said to Slim Waist Dance, "Not easy. Why don't we do what you did last time and get 2 robots to bring me in?" Slim Waist Dance suggested. "This person is level 40. It's too cruel to kill him." "Forget it." Gu Fei shook his head. "Useless." Slim Waist Dance looked at him in disdain. She was helpless against Gu Fei's inexplicable sympathy. Next stop. Gu Fei flipped through the name and found a scroll. The two teleported away under the watchful eyes of everyone. Did they leave? The players in the group were discussing among themselves. "Be careful, it might be a trap." Yeah. As a result, those who were careful continued to be careful. Those who wanted revenge continued to bring people to search for Gu Fei in the main city. Who would have thought that Gu Fei had already run to another main city to continue his assassination? In the end, the important person at this stop, Gu Fei, also didn't manage to kill him. This guy was even more ruthless. He directly turned himself in. As soon as Gu Fei arrived at the main city, he opened the quest to confirm the coordinates and teleport the emblem, but he failed the quest. At this time, less than 2 hours had passed since the chaotic battle in Cloud City. Even if it was just a little PK, it wouldn't disappear naturally. A sudden failure could only result in jail. As for whether he turned himself in or was arrested, Gu Fei didn't know. He only knew that this trip was in vain again. After that, it was Gu Fei's last stop. He knew that there were only so many people with PK value. This person also gathered people to take the initiative to defend. When Gu Fei and Slim Waist Dance saw the sea of people, they knew that it was impossible to force their way in. However, this was a guy who had only lost 1 level. He was level 42, so Slim Waist Dance had the right to request an assassination. Getting 2 NPC guards to lead the way and Slim Waist Dance to follow in stealth. This method had indeed been used before, and it had succeeded. However, it was very risky, especially after the assassination. It was too difficult to escape. However, Slim Waist Dance was very confident in what she had done once. Moreover, she liked to pursue excitement, so she insisted on doing this. Gu Fei always respected other people's requests. It didn't matter if they wanted to live or die. As such, he called out 2 guards. After giving the order, the guards strode forward, and Slim Waist Dance followed in stealth. Sure enough, it was the same as last time. No matter how suspicious the players were, they wouldn't be suspicious of real NPCs. Slim Waist Dance quickly followed these 2 people into the sea of people. Gu Fei also didn't keep watching and ran to the resurrection point. If Slender Waist Dance's assassination succeeded, Gu Fei could send him to the dungeon. If Slender Waist Dance's assassination failed, Gu Fei could just wait for Slender Waist Dance. Gu Fei was another brother of the same profession as Slender Waist Dance. In the end, everything went smoothly. Slim Waist Dance successfully followed the guards to the VIP's side. The two NPCs' sudden attack caught all the players off guard. Slim Waist Dance, who was an expert of the same class, was once again oppressed. After killing the other party, she immediately went into stealth and found a place to teleport. When she was safe, Slim Waist Dance sent a victory cheer to Gu Fei. Gu Fei's reaction was calm. "Yeah, got it. He's in the dungeon now." Slim Waist Dance's assassination succeeded. While running, the VIP resurrected in front of Gu Fei. Gu Fei didn't even say anything before killing him. If this guy was a bit slow, he might have missed the fact that he resurrected at the resurrection point and thought that he died and went straight back to the dungeon. Where to next? Slim Waist Dance was excited. This woman only knew how to stir up trouble. In the past, she only caused trouble in a main city. Now, she was following Gu Fei around the world, causing trouble for the whole world. This was exactly what she wanted. "No more," Gu Fei said. "Don't, find a few more," Slim Waist Dance said. "There's really no more. I don't know the names of the others. I'll ask Brother Yu if you have the latest information," Gu Fei said and really went to ask Brother Yu. In the end, Brother Yu could only shake his head. He also communicated with Sword Without Oath and the others. "In the end, they ambushed me, I ambushed you. It was a mess and they didn't really care who was who. Brother Yu couldn't dig out any information from them. His understanding of the enemy could only stop at this stage. The first few people who bought the Soaring Cloud scroll could be considered to have had 8 lifetimes of bad luck. Such an inconspicuous detail caused everyone to drop levels. Then, their identities were exposed, and they were hunted by Qianli when he got drunk. Now, they were either level 40, Calamity of the Dungeon, or level 40 plus Calamity of the Dungeon. Only the priest among them was lucky and escaped the second round of disaster. Gu Fei's operation had stopped, but the big shots still didn't know. The experience of those who survived was either a large group of people, or they surrendered and had their PK value erased. These two methods reflected two completely opposite mentalities. One was to not bow down and suppress Gu Fei with strength. In Cloud City, this was the initial stage of facing Qianli when he got drunk. On the other hand, surrendering meant that they had already admitted defeat. They couldn't afford to offend him, so they could hide. This was the final fate of the players in Cloud City when facing Qianli when he got drunk. At this time, those who were in prison and those who were gathering were also feeling depressed. Prison was lonely, and those who gathered weren't much happier. The more people there were, the more trouble there was. How many of them were willing to come over to help him? Most of them were too embarrassed to refuse because of their pride. After a long time, some people had opinions, and rumors came out. Some quietly slipped away, some greeted and left with the excuse that their brothers were not willing. At first, they were worried that Qianli would be in trouble when he got drunk. As a result, Qianli didn't show up when he got drunk. In the end, they were embarrassed. They guessed that it was a bit wishful thinking. Maybe Qianli wouldn't come looking for them when he got drunk. But this was also a guess. They didn't dare to be so relaxed. They could only smile and continue to deal with the friends who stayed, pretending to be brothers. Gu Fei's torment delayed the entire plan of the big shots. They were still planning to assassinate him. In the end, a bunch of their leaders were assassinated. After that, they didn't dare to move. He had been screwed in his hometown, and now he was delivering himself to the Cloud City. The big shots were depressed in their hearts. After playing the game for so long, they had never been so vexed. Ian Sandpaper, who was late, was now alone in Cloud City with his own people. The people who were ready to help identify people were all in place. One was said to have been in Against the Heavens and could completely recognize Against the Heavens. The other was said to be a former member of the 10 Meetings Alliance. He didn't dare say he knew Yun Zhongmu and the others, but he would definitely recognize them when they met. These guys, sigh. The big shots were being chased by Qinli. Ian Sandpaper quickly learned of the news, but there was nothing he could do. Right now, those people had no choice but to stay in their hometown. If they came to Cloud City, then it wouldn't be 1,000 Miles Drunk alone hunting them down. Instead, it would be 1,000 Miles Drunk leading a team to hunt them down. What do we do now? Ian Sandpaper's brothers asked Ian Sandpaper. These guys won't be here for a while. Let's start first. Ian Sandpaper said. Just walk around the streets blindly to identify people? Someone asked. Of course not. That's too inefficient. Players always have a fixed task to do every day. We'll just guard this fixed route for a day or two. Ian Sandpaper said. What about those who haven't arrived yet? We'll guard ours first. They'll guard theirs later. Anyway, everyone has to be identified. Ian Sandpaper said. Where are we going? The gate to the level 40 training area. They have to pass through it. Let's go. Ian Sandpaper waved his hand, and the group of assassins led by him and the two eyes who had identified the target were about to set off. As soon as they reached a crossroads, one of the eyes suddenly stopped and looked straight ahead in shock. That's the Sword Ghost. Against the Heavens Leader, Sword Demon? Ian Sandpaper hurriedly asked. Before he could reply, the other eye stared to the right, Yun Zhongmu. There are also people from the 10 meetings. What? Ian Sandpaper hurriedly looked to the right. A large group of people walked over from the right side of the street. After the two eyes looked left and right, they continued to report in surprise, against the Heavens Leader, unscathed in battle. 10 meetings alliances Duan Yun. What's going on? You're saying that there are against the Heavens people all around us? Ian Sandpaper was shocked. The two nodded. At this moment, anyone could see that it wasn't a coincidence that against the Heavens people suddenly appeared in all directions. They were coming for them. Immediately after, heads appeared on the 4 corners of the wall. One of the eyes pointed upwards and shouted, Yutian Shinming. The other pointed upwards and babbled. It was obvious that it had recognized them. Fuck, what's going on? Ian Sandpaper looked around. There was no way out. Teleport. Ian Sandpaper made a prompt decision. They had come on foot, but that didn't mean they didn't prepare teleportation scrolls. At this moment, a priest who appeared with Yutian Shinming on the roof waved his hand. It turned out that there were not only archers lying in ambush on the roof, but also mages. They immediately started to attack. Ian Sandpaper was still taking out a scroll, but when he was attacked, he couldn't use it. At the same time, the players in front of him, to his left, to his right, and to his left and right. No one explained anything to him. 20 players of the same class. There wasn't even a single cleric. They were all killed in an instant. The two eyes weren't among the 20 people, but they weren't treated specially. They also died under the attack. It wasn't over yet. Ian Sandpaper came slowly, but steadily. After arriving in Cloud City, he had already registered. At this moment, the 20 people were divided into half. Half were archers at the shooting range, and the other half were Thieves' Guild. Ian Sandpaper was also very experienced. He was prepared for the first ambush. How could there be fewer guards outside the resurrection point? Once they resurrected, he immediately sent a message to everyone, telling them not to leave the resurrection point. In the end, Ian Sandpaper came to the door and didn't go out. He just looked around. The outside looked ordinary, but there were 2 rows of players setting up stalls. Who knew if 200 assassins would jump out at them the moment they walked out? Damn, what's going on? Ian Sandpaper couldn't understand. He didn't buy any scrolls, nor did he move with others. How could his plan be seen through? The ambush was so accurate that he didn't even have the chance to use teleportation scrolls. What about now? What should he do now? He was trapped in the resurrection point, waiting for rescue. Let's not talk about when those guys would come. Even if they came, it was questionable if they had the ability to rescue. This time, they were prepared to carry out a secret operation. Rescuing people from the resurrection point could only be done openly. It obviously wouldn't work. Retreat. Ian Sandpaper thought for a moment and finally gave this order. Retreat? To where? His subordinate didn't understand. Teleportation scrolls, Ian Sandpaper said. They're teleporting. Over at Against the Will side, Sword Demon and the others immediately received the news. Of course there would be an ambush outside the resurrection point. This was a must. They aren't that stupid. Han family young master sighed. These people are also those guys? Brother, you asked. Yes. Han family young master said. How did you find out? Black Dragon Mountain Range. Han family young master said. What? These people all came from outside the city. The easiest way is obviously to teleport with a scroll. However, there might be some poor bastards who can't bear to teleport and insist on walking. If they want to get to our Cloud City, Black Dragon Mountain Range is the only way. That's why I asked Yun Xiang to organize a few people early in the morning. Everyone will take turns to wait there. Han family young master said. I see. Brother, you suddenly understood. Then why not just set up an ambush there? Yu Tian Shinming asked. Idiot, who knows when they'll arrive? How many people? If we don't know, how many people will be sent to ambush? How long will the ambush last? Han family young master said. So you already knew when these people arrived in Cloud City? Brother, you said. That's right. Han family young master nodded. TSK, I think they're still in the dark and died very strangely. Brother, you said. Stupidity is incurable. Han family young master said. Then are there still people at Black Dragon Mountain Range? Brother, you asked. Of course. Han family young master said. Then if everyone walked here, it would save us a lot of trouble. Brother, you said. But there probably aren't many people as poor as them. Let me see, how long did they take to get here from where they teleported? Han family young master tried to recall the time. Everyone else was looking at them. There were 20 people and 5 scrolls to teleport and 10 scrolls to and fro. If the elite group didn't have that unexpected fortune, they wouldn't have been able to afford to take the plane. Not being able to use the teleportation scrolls was a common phenomenon. It couldn't be called poor, right? Everyone expressed their disdain towards Han family young master. This guy looked down on normal people after becoming rich. Okay, let's go. After killing 20 people and dropping some small items, the OP players also left after cleaning up the battlefield. Brother Yu, it's too little, give us more. At this time, Gu Fei returned home from a business trip and gave his opinion to the logistics worker, Brother Yu. That's right, there's only a few of them. There were even some that he didn't allow us to kill. Annoying. Slender Waist Dance said. What? Everyone didn't understand. If we kill less than 40, how pitiful would that be? Gu Fei said. What's pitiful about that? That's what I call satisfying. Yu Tian Shinming jumped up and shouted. That's right, PvP is about building your own happiness on the pain of others. If you can directly blow your opponent into a nude state with one slash, that feeling, tisk tsk. Unscathed in battle swung his sword with an intoxicated expression. If the opponent is a beauty. Fireball appeared out of nowhere and added to unscathed in battle. How perverted. But it does sound interesting. Unscathed in battle said. He. Fireball's smile was despicable, but when Gu Fei glared at it, it immediately became serious. Cough, Brother Zui, you're back. Everyone's waiting for you. Chapter 902. Ian Sandpaper returned to his hometown. He really didn't have the face to share this news with the other big shots. Thinking back to how confident he was in the group chat, Ian Sandpaper guessed that if this news was made known to those people, none of them would sympathize with him, only ridicule would be waiting for him. Sandpaper could only stay here and analyze how he had been exposed. In fact, the Han family young master discovered that his method was very simple, so simple that it could even be said to be a bit stupid. He just had to wait on the path that Ian Sandpaper had to take. But it was this stupid method that Ian Sandpaper couldn't figure out for a while. He could only scratch his head. The other big shots only cared about themselves at this time. No one thought about Ian Sandpaper, who was fighting alone in Cloud City. Those who surrendered and went to jail had it easy. Those who didn't want to go to jail were mostly killing time, waiting for their PK points to disappear. There were a few who didn't care about other people's feelings and actually wanted to wash away their PK points. They had so many guards with them that it was really impressive. However, most of the guards didn't think that way. They were full of opinions, but they didn't want to voice them out. The players who were wanted by them were also scared. What did they do to deserve the attention of so many big shots from the main city to deal with them? Most people's legs were already weak when they were approached by so many experts. Washing their PK points was considered smooth. These few people who had the cheek to ask so many people to wash PK with them were quickly liberated. They all felt that it was a bit unbelievable that they could be so relaxed without PK points. Qianli's drunkenness brought too much pressure to everyone. Compared to them, the clerics who were represented by level 1 hypothermia were even more relaxed. They didn't have PK points, so they naturally wouldn't be troubled in this aspect. While others were very nervous to protect themselves, they continued to carry out the arrangements step by step. As it was inconvenient for them to carry out the assassination plan, they finally decided to stay in command and not follow the assassins around. After the candidates were finalized, they didn't bother those who were tossed around by Qianli's drunkenness and directly contacted Ian Sandpaper. However, Ian Sandpaper's reaction was also strange. He actually asked them to wait for a moment. When asked for the reason, Ian Sandpaper stammered. He either didn't reply or gave a vague answer like, "I have something to do." "What's going on?" First Low Temperature muttered to himself and sent another message to Sandpaper. He had to get to the bottom of this. Ian Sandpaper saw that someone was so insistent on getting to the bottom of the matter, so he had no choice but to give up. Fortunately, the person who wanted to know the truth was level 1 hypothermia, who seemed to be a very reasonable person in the group chat. Ian Sandpaper did not hide it anymore and revealed the truth. "We were ambushed." "What's going on?" First Low Temperature was shocked. "I don't know." At an intersection, they were suddenly pincered by the other party from all directions. Even the roofs were ambushed. It was obvious that they were well prepared. "We didn't even have time to use our teleportation scrolls before we were all killed," Sandpaper said. "What about now?" Hypothermia level 1 asked. "I'll teleport back to my main city first. If the other party can set up this meticulously, there must be an ambush outside the resurrection point." "We won't be able to get out," Sandpaper said. "How did your whereabouts get exposed?" First Low Temperature didn't understand. How could Ian Sandpaper know that? He could only sigh and say, "I don't know either." "Then can we continue with the next step?" First Low Temperature asked. Ian Sandpaper was silent. The other party's methods were truly endless. They had already seen through some of them, but they still didn't know about some of them. Under these circumstances, attacking rashly felt like they were going to die. "How are the others?" Sandpaper asked. He knew that First Low Temperature was a priest, so he was emotionally stable. It was hard to say for those who had PK points. "They're all annoyed." First Low Temperature said. "If you ask me, I think we should all take a good rest today and stabilize our emotions. We'll talk about it tomorrow, Sandpaper suggested. On this day, they had suffered a series of blows. Some were eager for revenge, while others were already feeling timid. In short, their mentality was very unstable, including Ian Sandpaper himself. This inexplicable ambush made him feel uneasy, and he felt that he also needed to rest. Okay, I'll try to persuade everyone. First, Low Temperature knew that Ian Sandpaper didn't give a good impression of the others. It was better for him to go and communicate with everyone. The communication went smoothly. All the VIPs were physically and mentally exhausted. They were already tired of staying in the game and wanted to escape. Rest? That was a great idea. Who knew that at this time, Ingqi's people would suddenly contact them? Eagle Group's Eternity, representing Ingqi, to ask everyone how things were going. Everyone was depressed. But they couldn't vent their anger on Ingqi. They were too embarrassed to even say it. Back then, when they were gathered together, none of them took very defying too seriously. But now, they were all dejected. Half of the 31 heroes had already disappeared from the top of the leaderboards. There were also many who had run to the bottom of the leaderboards. Faced with their employer's question, this group of prideful experts wished there was a hole in the ground to crawl into. What's wrong? Is there a problem? Eternity's message was sent in a group because the 31 of them all had the same reaction, even though some of the messages couldn't be sent out. There's a bit of a problem. Some of the VIPs answered in bits and pieces. Do you need any help? Eternity asked. How can you help us? The VIPs asked weakly. In terms of actual combat, we obviously don't have much strength. Otherwise, we wouldn't need to ask you guys for help. However, in terms of resources, we can provide you with the best guarantee. Eternity said. Oh. The VIPs were suddenly excited. Free? This was a question that some people were concerned about. This, if it's equipment, I hope that you guys can give us a deposit. It's not that we don't trust you guys. This. I'm sure everyone understands. Eternity said. The VIPs immediately understood. It wasn't that they didn't trust him, but they really didn't trust him. If the equipment was handed over and the players didn't return it, there was nothing they could do. It was reasonable to ask for a deposit for equipment. As for other consumables, it's not convenient to provide them for free. However, if you guys have a need, our boss has said that he can give you guys a discount. Eternity said. The big shots couldn't say anything. They had already promised a very high reward for their work. Now, even if they didn't give them the extra overdraft, it wouldn't be a big deal. Giving them a discount was already a show of kindness. If you guys have any needs, you can contact Ingqi's director 5 nights. If he's not here, you can look for me. Eternity didn't immediately ask for a reply. After saying this, he didn't say anything else. Actually, how could Eternity not know what kind of situation these VIPs were in? Studios didn't have much combat power, but their information network was something that no other guild could compare to. For example, Child Elite Group used Qianli's Drunk as a studio, or South Azusa and the others took on quests to drop equipment. It seemed like a studio, but in reality, they were just workers. A real studio first had to gather information. They had to understand the situation of the main city, the direction of the classes, the production of equipment, the needs of the players, etc. These details could be obtained by hiring workers or temporary workers, but in the end, they needed professionals to analyze the situation from a strategic point of view. This strategy was a business strategy. Through this information, they could control the market and the prices of goods. The ultimate goal was to control the exchange rate between in-game gold and the real money outside of the game. There were too many things to learn in a studio. Gu Fei and a few others wanted to become a real studio. In fact, they were still far from it. A small studio focused on one or a few main cities, but a large studio like Ages could be analyzed from the perspective of the entire world. Talented directors like Five Knights were mainly responsible for this aspect of work. The focus of the purchase, the deadline for stockpiling, the time to sell, etc. They analyzed the direction of the market from a large amount of information and thought of ways to earn as much gold as possible. To be able to become a director was actually quite an impressive person. Although the directors were gone, the lower-level intelligence sources were still around. Age's work network was also continuously recovering. Now, from a business point of view, Five Knights might not be able to do it alone, but it was very easy for him to get hold of some news of these big shots being beaten to a pulp by someone who defied the natural order. This was especially so for these brothers with PK points. In order to prevent 1,000 miles drunk from hunting them down, they had almost caused a storm in the city. How could Ing Chi, whose business network was spread across the main cities, not know about it? Eternity followed Unrivaled Talent's instructions and finally took this step. Eternity confirmed that his guess was correct. Revenge? Overpowered players? The boss of the studio wouldn't be such a childish player. Overpowered players had already become a chess piece in his hands. He wanted to use this chess piece to start a world-class PK war and make a fortune from it. Benefits. From the beginning, he only pursued benefits. The anger he felt from being piked by the players would probably be forgotten after a night's sleep. Moreover, in this world war, overpowered players wouldn't have a good ending. He had already achieved his goal of revenge. However, there were still things that Unrivaled Talent didn't expect from the players. The VIPs suffered from overpowered players again and again, and this was what Unrivaled Talent wanted to see. The more they suffered, the more they wanted to take revenge, and the more power they would gather. Losses were inevitable in piking. Dropped equipment had to be replenished, life-saving scrolls had to be brought, and other strange items that could help in achieving victory would be in demand. Eternity even suspected that Matchless Genius would come up with some way to help Very Defying side when the other side's strength reached a point where Very Defying couldn't handle it anymore, allowing them to continue fighting on equal footing. Perhaps he had already found one. Eternity suddenly had a thought. According to the news from Cloud City, Unhindered 4Cs and Rosy Cloud seemed to have started helping overpowered players. Eternity initially thought that overpowered players were actively seeking help, but now it seemed like Unrivaled Talent had made some arrangements to push the boat along with the current. Those who could help Age Chi didn't necessarily have to be Age Chi's people. For example, some of Age Chi's friends, some of the higher-ups who were greedy for money, could become Age Chi's helper. Eternity originally didn't have access to Age Chi's network, but since Unrivaled Talent didn't have anyone he could use, he had to run between two ends. In fact, it was clear that Matchless Hero's goal wasn't to seek revenge. If he really wanted revenge, he could have easily taken down Matchless Hero with the combined strength of the Eagle Group. However, the Eagle Group hadn't made a move yet. Unrivaled Talent's goal was to create more trouble for Unrivaled Talent, and was willing to invest a lot of money to do so. This was actually an investment. Unrivaled Talent wanted to ignite a spark, and then use it to sweep the entire game. Businessman. Eternity sighed. What a scary businessman. In such a storm, perhaps countless players would be thankful for Ink Studios' timely help, but who would have thought that it was all caused by this guy? When the fire was completely lit, no one would be able to stop it, not even the omnipotent system. The system could stop the game, but it couldn't extinguish the fire in the players' hearts. What will happen? Eternity shook his head, walking alone on the streets. On the VIP side, although they suddenly received the message from Age Chi's studio, it didn't change their original intention of resting. Everyone went offline to calm down. However, everyone knew that they had to calm their minds to prevent themselves from making the wrong decision due to their impulsiveness, anger, and depression. Their desire for revenge would never cool down. This was no longer for the reward, not for themselves, but for the brothers who had died together with them. At this time, Gu Fei had a new list in his hands. It was a new batch of VIPs that Brother Yu had used various methods to expose. Gu Fei patted Brother Yu's shoulder and expressed his praise for his work. However, in this list, He searched for one, but they weren't online. He searched for another, but they still weren't online. They're all not online. Gu Fei was puzzled. They're all afraid and went offline to hide. Yu Tian Xinming guessed. I don't disagree with this possibility. Gu Fei said. Everyone was speechless. If that's the case, why don't we take a break? This definitely isn't over. Brother Yu suggested. This H Cheese Studio is really never ending. No, even without H Cheese Studio, this still isn't over. Han family young master said. Why? Unscathed in battle asked. If your friends all dropped levels while helping you, would you just let it go? Han family young master said. That depends on who it is. If it's you who dropped levels, then what's there to say? Not just let it go, I'm even going to become sworn brothers with them. Unscathed in battle said. Even if you drop levels 10 times, I might not even drop once. Stop dreaming. Han family young master mocked. So what you're saying is that H Chi has already pulled himself out of this and is just sitting back and watching the show. Brother Yu was the one who pulled him back when everyone was off topic. That's obviously the case. Han family young master said. If that's the case, how long will it take for this to end? Sword Demon frowned. These people. Sword Demon took the two lists from Gu Fei's hands and looked at their information, deep in thought. Negotiate with them? Analyze the sinister intentions of H Chi's studio? Brother Yu asked. What sinister intentions? The Han family's young master asked him. Ing Chi must have given them something to tempt them to come here. 31 VIPs from each of the main cities have to deal with a newly established guild with just over 200 players. Does this look like a quest that sends them to their deaths and blows up the situation? We can only blame ourselves for being too strong. Han family young master sighed. This time, his shamelessness finally dragged everyone into it. Everyone instantly felt that it was easier to accept. Currently, these people aren't online. Looks like they're adjusting a new strategy. Brother Yu said. New strategy? TSK. Han family young master said in disdain. Compared to this, I'm more concerned about whether or not H Chi will do anything. Is anyone here? Just as they said this, the door opened. After having a stronghold, they rarely went to the pub to discuss matters. In their own stronghold, even if they stood for a meeting, it would still look more professional. The player by the door opened it. Everyone looked and saw that it was Sword Without Oath who came uninvited. Yo, you're all here. Hey, Qianli, long time no see. I haven't had the chance to thank you yet. Sword Without Oath came uninvited again. Behind him was Windwalker's reflection of years, so no one stopped him. There was nothing to stop him. Thank me for what? Gu Fei didn't understand. Thank you for not accepting a bounty on me. Sword Without Oath was still immersed in being tricked. Oh. You have PK points. Gu Fei took out his bounty license. Sword Without Oath's expression changed. This situation didn't seem right. Sword Without Oath reacted quickly and immediately said, No, not now. I mean in the past. There was a time when I had a lot of PK points on me, but you didn't accept my bounty. Only now do I have the chance to thank you. When was that? Gu Fei's serious expression made Sword Without Oath want to slap them, but he didn't dare to. He could only continue to lie. When was it? 3 or 5 days ago. Look at my memory. 3 days, 5 days. Gu Fei actually started to remember. Sword Without Oath's head was full of sweat. Han family young master finally came to help him out. Enough. How long do we have to talk about something as small as a sesame seed? Damn, I was almost killed by Qianli in a drunken stupor. Is this a sesame seed? Sword Without Oath was quite unhappy, but seeing that Gu Fei really wasn't thinking anymore, he let out a sigh of relief. Guild leader Sword Without Oath, why are you here? Sword Demon asked. I'm just here to ask if those bastards are going to make any moves. Unsworn Sword said. Chapter 903. Unsworn Sword had clearly tasted the sweetness of victory in the previous battle. These people were all experts who could stand shoulder to shoulder with him. Their equipment was luxurious, and their companions would definitely be high-class people even if they were thrown into the four seas. The loot dropped by such a group of people was a pleasant surprise for Unsworn Sword. At this time, Unsworn Sword was overflowing with greed. He couldn't wait to run over to Against the Heavens to ask about the situation. He didn't even give any information as he wanted to personally see Against the Heavens reply. Oh. Leader Unsworn, you've sworn to fight against these people that bully our Cloud City players to the end? Han Family Young Master asked. Of course. Unsworn Sword straightened his chest. That's perfect. We've gathered some information on these people. Leader Unsworn, take a look, this is where they came from. The young master of the Han family pushed a pile of materials in front of Unsworn Sword. This time, the information had been upgraded once again. Brother Blessing had more or less dug up some information about these experts' equipment from the forums. Now that it was listed here, it was extremely tempting to Unsworn Sword, who had come here just for the equipment. His saliva was practically dripping down. These people must be ruthlessly eliminated. Unsworn Sword expressed his determination. It was unknown if he was targeting the equipment or the person wearing it. Then I'll have to trouble you, Leader Unsworn. Han Family Young Master said. Where are they now? Unsworn Sword asked. It's written here. Han Family Young Master said. Where? Unsworn Sword looked left and right, but didn't see anything like coordinates. The only information was the main city of these people. You can't be referring to this, right? Unsworn Sword pointed at someone's main city information. What else could it be? They're not coming. Unsworn Sword's question was a bit naive. Waiting for them to come isn't as elegant as taking the initiative to attack. Han Family Young Master said. This is a bit far. Unsworn Sword stuttered. He had already noticed that this person wasn't giving him information, but rather was mocking him. Traversing the four seas has once crossed 6 main cities to complete the reward mission. This distance shouldn't be a problem, right? Han Family Young Master was relentless. This. I have to think about it, Unsworn Sword said. Then go and think about it. Han Family Young Master dismissed Sword of No Oath. Time's Reflection and Feng Xing, who were watching from the side, naturally didn't feel too happy either. However, the two of them originally did not agree with the idea of immediately asking for information from Unsworn Sword. However, Unsworn Sword was blinded by the equipment that dropped, so he stubbornly insisted on going his own way. As a result, the two of them felt a little pleasure of revenge. If Unsworn Sword really left just like that, it would be too embarrassing. Sword Demon stood up at the right time and said with a smile, you don't have to worry about these people for the time being. They are currently offline. When Unsworn Sword saw Sword Demon speak, he suddenly became spirited again and quickly asked, then what's next? Next, we don't know either. Guild Leader Unsworn, you should also pay more attention. If anything happens, we'll communicate, Sword Demon said. That's good. Unsworn Sword nodded repeatedly. Sword Demon's words were still trustworthy. Then I'll take my leave. With this promise from Sword Demon, Unsworn Sword left in satisfaction. This Unsworn Sword, has he already been bribed by Ying Qi? After Unsworn Sword left, Brother Yu suddenly asked everyone. Everyone looked at each other, but in the end, no one could come to a conclusion. Unsworn Sword was a person who would sometimes act stupidly, but because of this, he would sometimes do something that normal people wouldn't expect. This kind of action was generally known as stupid. When this person wanted to do something stupid, normal people really couldn't figure it out. No matter what, the other party has gone offline. Let's take advantage of this time to do our own things. When they come online again, we can also go offline and rest. Sword Demon said with a smile. Everyone heard this and also laughed. If others went offline, we would also go offline. This was following the rhythm of others. The smart thing to do would be like Sword Demon's arrangement, using the other party's offline time to relax and wait for them to come online before resting. Since this matter was basically the other party taking the initiative, there was no need to rush at all. What's more, there was still Unsworn Sword leading reigning the 4 Seas to rush ahead. This guy, it seemed like being the #1 guild in Cloud City wasn't enough anymore. He wanted to quickly arm and strengthen himself to unify the world. Just like that, the Unsworn Sword players dispersed. Some were leveling, some were doing quests, and they all walked out of their strongholds. And Sword Demon stayed behind. He picked up the information on the table and once again fell into deep thought. The Unsworn Sword players listened to Sword Demon's instructions. Although they were free to move around, they still maintained vigilance and basically did things in groups of 3 to 5. They were also a little wary of reigning the 4 Seas. Obviously, Brother Yu's Unsworn Sword being bribed theory was quite popular. The current Unsworn Sword situation was already very clear to everyone in the guild. Whether it was the original Unsworn Sword players or the 10 meetings brothers brought by Yun Zhongmu, none of them felt afraid. Instead, some of them felt quite proud. To be remembered by all the strong people in the world, the Unsworn Sword's weight could be seen clearly. This night passed very peacefully. After packing up the Cloud City quests, Gu Fei left. The quests still made him depressed. Most of them were Unsworn Sword players, and the others were also very annoying. They originally had a wishful thinking, but when they saw that Qianli was drunk and really came looking for them, they immediately begged and said that they were going to turn themselves in. Boss Qianli would give them a chance and so on. In the beginning, there was only one person who did this. Gu Fei's heart softened and he let him go. Later on, perhaps because of this method spreading, all the players with PK value that Gu Fei sought out would immediately express that they were going to turn themselves in. There was no need for Gu Fei to bother himself with them. I'm just using the excuse of a wanted quest to come in PK. When did I really become a constable who sends people to the dungeon? Gu Fei looked at the PK carriers who rolled and crawled away from his sword and ran to the dungeon to turn themselves in. He was somewhat at a loss. Apart from this small interlude, it was a rare peaceful night in recent days. The Unsworn Sword players were satisfied with their own tasks. Those who needed to rest rested, those who needed to do what they needed to do, and each went their separate ways. After resting for the night, the VIPs re-entered the game and greeted each other, then collectively went offline and entered their discussion group. This was the first time that 31 people gathered together. Even those who hadn't been released from prison yet were visited by someone and received a message. Everyone in the discussion group first expressed their condolences, especially the few poor people who had dropped to level 40 and were also in prison after being hunted by Qianli. They received the most attention. Then, the focus of the problem focused on how Ian's sandpaper was exposed. After a calm night, everyone was seriously thinking about the problem. No one laughed at Ian's sandpaper's ambush. Now everyone was really in a predicament. I've been thinking about this all night, said Ian's sandpaper. Ian's sandpaper said, the problem should be on the narrow mountain road from Moonlit Night City to Cloud City. This is the only path between Cloud City and the outside world. If someone is guarding here, then anyone who walks from the outer city to Cloud City won't be able to escape their eyes. That's simple. Yes, that's simple. That's enough. Ian's sandpaper said. So, maybe they're still insisting on using this method? Someone said. If it was me, I definitely wouldn't miss such an effective and easy method. Ian's sandpaper said. In other words, no matter what, we can't enter Cloud City on foot. That's impossible. Players rarely come and go between the main cities, so even if we split up and enter, it's enough to arouse their suspicion. Ian Sandpaper said. So we can only use teleportation scrolls. Someone sighed. We can't give it away for free, but we can give it a discount. Let's all go through Inky. Someone said. That's not a problem. After sitting in jail for a night, he still hadn't been released. His PK value was high, and he was wanted. He had to sit in jail for 2 hours at 1 o'clock. Compared to the others who had just gotten a good night's sleep, he was obviously a bit listless, but he was still very thoughtful. The problem is, we're going to Cloud City again. What will we use to fight against them this time? There's a piece of information that Inky helped us find. Hypothermia announced, the second time we were ambushed, we faced thousands of opponents. They were Cloud City's largest guild, Crisscross. In addition, there was also a level 6 guild, Rosy Cloud. I'm sure everyone here understands the concept of a level 6 guild the best, right? First Low Temperature said. Of course they knew, because as long as they were guild players, they would all come from a level 6 guild. A level 6 guild didn't just mean they had the most players. To be able to reach level 6, it was a symbol of strength. It could be said that 70% of the elite players in a city were divided by level 6 guilds. The rank 6 guild of a main city represented the strength of that main city to a certain extent. The big shots wouldn't underestimate any level 6 guild. The problem was, according to the information they received, the players in Cloud City were prejudiced against overpowered, so they wouldn't help them. In the end, something that shouldn't have happened became a reality. If 2 level 6 guilds interfered, how would it be enough for each of them to lead 20 people? What about the assassination plan? How should they proceed? Should I include these 2 rank 6 guilds as well? If they included these 2, would there be a third? Their judgment of the relationship between overpowered and the players in Cloud City was clearly wrong. Even the level 6 guilds that represented the elites of the city were standing on overpowered's side. Wouldn't the other guilds be standing on overpowered's side? They were all level 6 guilds. Who didn't know that a level 6 guild would always have many other smaller guilds attached to it? How many of such backup forces did Unhindered and Rosy Clouds have? Or could it be that the ones they sent out last time were only their backup forces, and their regular army hadn't even been mobilized? The above questions were raised and analyzed one after another. In the end, everyone realized that they were a lot more energetic after a good night's sleep. However, the problems seemed to have become more complicated and difficult as the information was perfected. Originally, they thought they were only going to cross the city to kill a small guild with a few top-tier experts, but now? The appearance of a level 6 guild seemed to have turned the situation into a cross-city attack. That's right, with a level 6 guild as the leader, it wasn't impossible for all the players in the city to unite against a foreign enemy. No matter how arrogant the big shots were, they wouldn't dare to make an enemy out of a city. Moreover, they didn't dare to be arrogant anymore. Among those present, there weren't many who were still at the top of the leaderboards. Everyone, the situation is grim, said a weather-beaten person in a heavy tone. It's impossible to go against a city. Even if all 31 of our guilds were pulled over, I don't think we'd be able to do it. Someone said. Moreover, it's impossible. Sandpaper said, let's not talk about how many of our guilds would be willing to go. Even if all of our guilds were willing, 1,000 people and 250 scrolls, I don't think Inky would be able to take out so many teleportation scrolls at once. That's why we can only go on foot. This involves the mountain road in the Black Dragon Mountain Range. That road isn't only one, it's easy to defend and hard to attack. As long as they discover us, they can just set up a pocket formation at the exit of the mountain road. A few hundred people can easily take in tens of thousands of us. There's no other way. There's no way to set up a formation on such a narrow mountain road. Even if we have millions or tens of millions of people, we'll only be able to take in a few dozen. Are you sure that's the only way? Hypothermia asked. Sandpaper was startled. We went through Moonlit Night City and asked around along the way. I searched the forums yesterday, but no one said there was a second way. If there's only one way, then players wouldn't waste their energy looking for a second way. Hypothermia said. It's hard to believe that there's only one path between the two main cities in the parallel world's real-world map. Expressed the man who had experienced many hardships. But that mountain road is surrounded by cliffs. Even if there's another way, it's definitely not near it. Sandpaper said. Of course it's not near it. Okay, then let's take a step back. There's another way. What do we do? Are we really going to take a level 6 guild each? Then let me say this first. I don't have enough power to take my entire guild there. Sandpaper had to say this. He was a core member of the guild, an expert, but he wasn't the guild leader. And even if he was the guild leader, he couldn't force 1,000 people to travel such a long distance. The goal was to get a reward for one of the core members of the guild, or to take revenge for 20 of his guild members. Either way, it wasn't possible to move 1,000 people. There weren't such united guilds in the game. Only a small portion of the guild members were united and active. There was also a portion of the guild members who were lurking in the shadows. They couldn't decline an activity that involved collective benefits, so they could only participate. But when it came to matters related to personal grudges, very few guilds were united enough to move out. Chapter 904. What Ian Sandpaper had considered was obviously not a problem that was unique to his family. Among the big shots present, there were some leaders, but they did not have this kind of confidence. Let alone 1,000 people on an expedition, when there weren't any important quests, having 1,000 people online at the same time was very difficult. Isn't this a bit difficult? After Sandpaper gave his opinion, the others quickly agreed. I say, what are you thinking? Sandpaper asked. It seemed like level 1 low temperature and weathered frost really wanted to do such a thing. Sandpaper couldn't understand this, because it was simply impossible. To mobilize the entire guild, there had to be a pretty good reason, right? Because I went to work for a studio and got wiped out, so now I want everyone to help me take revenge. This reason wasn't pretty at all. Without a pretty reason, even if the guild leader was your brother, you wouldn't be able to mobilize the entire guild. With the current situation, do you think Sandpaper's assassination plan can still succeed? Weathered Frost asked. Sandpaper wasn't too sure. If the other side used the entire city's strength to create a white terror, the more they killed, the more united they would become. Terror was a tactic that had limited effects in the game. No matter how heavy the death penalty was, the players were still alive, no? There weren't many people who would throw away their lives, but there were plenty of people who would throw away their levels. At this time, I feel like we need to have a clear goal for the assassination. We can't give those big guilds any excuse to make it seem like we're targeting all of their players. Sandpaper said. You're a bit naive. They have the power to describe us. They don't care what we do. They'll just focus on making it seem like we're targeting their entire city. If they didn't have this little bit of cunning, they wouldn't be so hard to deal with. Weathered Frost said. Then what are you trying to say? Sandpaper asked. What I'm trying to say is that we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. If you want to continue, think of a way to mobilize as much strength as possible. As for those who want to make a small fuss, pretend like nothing happened. Swallow your anger and leave. Weathered Frost said. Swallow my anger? No way. This could be considered a difficult choice to make, but someone quickly jumped out and immediately answered. It was the unluckiest student in number 31 high, Lemon Yellow. Losing levels, losing equipment, going to jail, he had encountered all sorts of tragedies. If he could just swallow it all, then others would have fewer thoughts about him. As for whether or not they would be able to take it lying down, in fact, everyone's behavior during the chase across the city when Qianli was drunk had already shown some reaction. Those who would gather people to deal with the situation were those who still had the spirit. Those who turned themselves in or hid in their private houses were already showing their weakness to a certain extent. Don't forget, these 31 people were also chosen from Eternal's detailed analysis of the expert ranking. They were specifically chosen for those with the attribute of causing trouble. Easy to deal with? Logically speaking, there shouldn't be any here. For them to hide and try to calm things down, it meant that they didn't have a 100% thorough understanding. Some of them didn't meet their original requirements. I'll give everyone some time to think about it. I hope you can give us an answer as soon as possible. Lemon Yellow jumped out quickly, but he didn't cause much of a reaction. Right now, it was silent. Lemon Yellow shouted a few more times, but seeing that no one was paying attention, he could only quiet down. Mobilize as much strength as possible. Eternal's words were suggestive. Calling people didn't necessarily mean calling people from their own guilds. Everyone had been in the game for so long that they couldn't limit their friends to their own guilds. And high-leveled players, the friends they made were basically on par with them. This habit of birds of a feather flocking together was the same in the game, so everyone's friend list would have experts from other guilds. Eternal's words meant that they shouldn't just think about their guilds. This time, they needed to mobilize their personal connections and call out all the strength they could from their network. The important figures had already understood this layer of meaning. They were all looking through their friend lists, calculating their choices. Some of them were already at a loss. What was the point of continuing like this? For the reward they had wanted from the very beginning? For the sake of a few of his brothers who had lost a level? For the losses they had suffered? When everyone had just died and returned to the city, they were all furious and wanted to call for more people. At that time, there would always be people who would come out and calm them down. But now, after going around in a big circle, they were back to calling for more people. The difference was that everyone was very calm now. Even if they called for more people, they would only do so after calmly thinking about it. Even though the important figures had lost again and again, at least they hadn't made mistakes because of their impulsiveness. If you don't want to continue, say hi. Everyone respects each other's choices. Eternal said in the chat. Eternal, don't rush us. Let everyone think about it. Low Temperature replied. All right. The weather-beaten man maintained his silence. In the group chat, the silence continued for almost half an hour. Finally, someone opened his mouth and weakly asked, "Is there anyone else?" The fastest to react was Eternal. What's everyone's decision? Speak up. This comrade had clearly thought it through, but he didn't want to be the first to speak up. If everyone has thought it through and has no objections, then from now on, within a minute. If you don't want to continue, then leave the group chat. If you stay, then you have to advance and retreat with everyone and fight to the end. Weathered Frost was quite smart. There were two choices between continuing and not continuing. If they said it out loud, it would be a disagreement, and there might be a quarrel. Since Weathered Frost had suggested this idea, of course he would insist on continuing. He didn't want to persuade those who were already wavering, but he was also afraid that such a quarrel would cause those who wanted to continue to waver again. Therefore, he came up with this idea to let everyone make a choice silently. No one would affect anyone else, and it would also not cause a quarrel. After Eternal finished speaking, no one expressed any objections. Clearly, everyone had thought it through. Or rather, they had thought it through a long time ago. It was just that someone was the first to speak up. 1 minute. Eternal stared at the time and closed his eyes. 1 minute later, how many people would be left in the group chat? Beep beep beep. Eternal heard a sound in his ears. This was the system notification sound that he had set up. It was impossible for anyone else to apply to enter the group chat. At this moment, the notification must mean that someone had already left. Is there only one? Eternal thought, and didn't open his eyes. Who could it be? He only slowly guessed in his heart. In his boredom, this could be considered a game. Would the last person to leave be the same as his guess? Beep beep beep. The notification sound appeared a few more times. The 1-minute time limit was finally up. Eternal opened his eyes. 26. There were still 26 people left in the group chat. A total of 5 people left in the end. They were afraid and gave up. Or perhaps they were more rational, thinking that it wasn't worth it. In short, people with different paths couldn't make plans together. What made Eternal happy was that the people he had high hopes for all stayed in the group chat. Hypothermia 1, Come Again, and Sandpaper, who was late and the first to question this plan, didn't leave. Thank you all for staying. Hypothermia 1 more said. Don't mention it. We're not staying for others. We're staying for ourselves. There's no need to thank us. Someone said clearly. Hypothermia 1 more smiled, then let's continue. We'll still organize an assassination team to sneak into Cloud City. This time, everyone can contacting Chi's studio for the teleportation scroll. Didn't he already promise us a discount? In Cloud City, the assassination must be accurate and deadly. Only do it when you have enough confidence to succeed and retreat. Don't take risks. I'll be in charge of finding the second path to Cloud City, said a man who had experienced many hardships. What if there isn't a second passage? Someone asked. Don't worry, there will be one. Eternal said. Black Dragon Mountain Range? I want to see how long it will be. What if there isn't one? Someone was still persistent. Eternal, you're so sure. Is there any news? Hypothermia 1 more asked. Of course, so just leave this to me. You don't have to worry about it, said the experienced man. Everyone listened and didn't ask any more questions. Everyone had been through thick and thin together. Eternal was their commander, so they still had this bit of trust. Everyone logged off and returned to the game. Ian Sandpaper immediately wanted to contact Eternal, but the message was blocked. It was obvious that the guy hadn't left the dungeon yet. Ian Sandpaper thought about it and sent Hypothermia 1 more message, you two are working together. Is there a second passage to Cloud City? There should be. Hypothermia 1 more message said. What do you mean there should be? Ian Sandpaper asked. Only Eternal knows the specifics. I believe in him, but he doesn't have 100% confidence. So it can only be said there should be. Hypothermia 1 more message said. That guy is still in the dungeon. Ian Sandpaper said. I know. He'll be out soon. Hypothermia 1 more message said. What is it? Ian Sandpaper was confused. I really don't know. Hypothermia 1 more message smiled bitterly, I'm the same as you. I can only wait for his news. What is it? Eternal's time in the dungeon was up. When he was teleported out, his eyes lit up. Hi. A cleric greeted him. It was a low-level cleric. Hi. Eternal quickly walked down the stairs of the dungeon. Now you finally trust me a little more, don't you? He asked with a smile. Indeed. The weather-beaten man nodded. Hongchen Yixiao. He extended his right hand. You know what I'm called. Eternal shook his hand. Chapter 905. The reason why Weathered Wind and Frost was confident that he could find such a path was because of a mysterious visitor who suddenly came to visit him while he was in prison. This person seemed to be very knowledgeable and was especially concerned about Qianli's drunk. At this moment, he was explaining to Weathered Wind and Frost about their big shot being chased across the city by Qianli's drunk. Weathered Wind and Frost still didn't know about this. He just found out that their people were killed by the enemy from the inside and outside. This news was told to him by a brother in prison. After that, his contact with the outside world was cut off and basically no one from the outside world came in. And this person explained to him in detail the method of Qianli's drunk. He had no choice but to believe it because he was sure that he was chased by this method. Otherwise, how could Qianli's drunk so quickly and accurately catch up to his position? Qianli's drunk. Weathered Wind and Frost clenched his teeth. Isn't it very abnormal? Who the hell are you? To deal with very extraordinary, it's impossible not to defeat Qianli's drunk first. The other said. Do I need you to tell me that? What do you plan to do next? The other asked. Why should I tell you? Who the hell are you? Weathered Wind and Frost even suspected that this was the enemy's spy. But for a spy to spy for information, wasn't it a little too blatant for him to act like this? How could there be such a brainless spy? With your current situation, you won't be able to take down very extraordinary on a small scale. The other said. What did you say? Originally, you were a group of elite experts, but now. The other shook his head. How do you know so much? It's too obvious. Look at the changes in the top ranks of the professions today. There are too many. The other said. Weathered Wind and Frost was gloomy. He knew that he was one of the changes. You used this method to notice me and then ran over to find me? Weathered Wind and Frost suddenly came to a realization. That's right. The others couldn't find your position. Only you were in prison, so I found you. The other smiled. Why are you looking for me? Who the hell are you? I'm here to help you. Who am I? My name is Hengqin Yixiao. How can this name help you? Yi Xiaowu said. Nonsense, who wants to know your name? I want to know your background and why you're looking for me. Didn't I say that I would help you? How? That's why I asked you what you'll do next, Yi Xiaowu asked. I don't know. I'm still in prison. How would I know? What's the situation outside? Just like what I said earlier, your people are being hunted by Qianli across the city. As long as he knows your names, he can do it. As for your names, just pay attention to the changes in the level rankings, just like me, and you'll be able to filter them out. Your people have lemon yellow. Yi Xiaowu took out a piece of paper and read a string of names. His weather-beaten face twitched. Sure enough, each of them was one of the 31 people. These people will probably end up like you very soon. Yi Xiaowu said. Do you have a way to deal with Qianli's drunken? Weather-beaten asked. If you gather all the strength of the 31 people, it won't be impossible to deal with Qianli's drunken. Yi Xiaowu said. All the strength? Weather-beaten sneered, do you think that's possible? Do you know where the 31 people are? And where are our opponents? I know. It's difficult to go to Cloud City, right? Indeed, there are too many people, and it's impossible to solve it with teleportation scrolls. Yi Xiaowu said. Do you have a way other than teleportation scrolls? Weather-beaten asked. The two people went around, and finally came to this point. Yi Xiaowu pointed out the second path to Cloud City, but Weather-beaten didn't understand the meaning of this second path. He flew around, and didn't know what the topography of the only path in Cloud City meant. Although there was Yi Xiaowu's explanation, Weather-beaten didn't feel that this additional path was of great significance, and didn't pay much attention to Yi Xiaowu. Yi Xiaowu understood this as distrust. After speaking, he smiled and left, saying that he would wait for Weather-beaten to come out to talk. Come out, if you keep talking, I'll kill you. At that time, Weather-beaten thought. He didn't have a good impression of this idiot who inexplicably rushed into the prison and told him about the second path. Until their discussion group meeting was held again, Weather-beaten, who had been in prison, learned a lot of new information from level 1 hypothermia. Very against the natural order was not just very against the natural order, it was possible to set off a battle against the whole city. To continue or to give up, they even stood at the intersection of such a choice. Weather-beaten didn't want to give up. His carefully designed trap was used by Qianli's drunken to kill him, giving him PK points, and caused him to drop 2 levels. Then Qianli chased after him, sent him to the dungeon, and said that he was very pitiful. Humiliation, this was all humiliation. Weather-beaten would never give up. If he didn't give up, what should he do? At this time, Weather-beaten realized the importance of the situation that the idiot priest had described to him. Just from the fact that Ian's sandpaper had been ambushed and killed by a heaven-defying ambush because he had chosen this path, one could see just how big of a flaw this only path was. But Weather-beaten still couldn't believe it. When they needed a path, there was such an idiot who gave it to them. Maybe this was another very against the natural order trap. What was this person's name again? When the discussion group meeting started, it had been a while since Weather-beaten met Yi Xiaowu. Yi Xiaowu had said his name, but Weather-beaten didn't pay attention at that time. Moreover, he always had the habit of forgetting people's names, so he couldn't remember what that person's name was. Weather-beaten was very depressed. If this was really a chance, but he couldn't contact this person, then he would miss it. But he finally remembered that the person said that he would wait for him outside the dungeon. So active, Weather-beaten felt like it was a trap again. In the half an hour when everyone in the discussion group was considering whether to continue or give up, Weather-beaten was madly entangled with this question. In the end, he made a decision to believe it for the time being. Because although he couldn't understand that person's behavior, the other person's words were clear and logical, and he didn't seem like an idiot. He only privately communicated with Level 1 Hypothermia about this matter, and Level 1 Hypothermia also thought that there was no other way out. If they didn't want to give up, it was worth a try. When Weather-beaten confidently told everyone that he had a clue and could find the way, he was quite nervous. Not to mention the way, if they didn't see that guy at the door of the dungeon, then everything would be in vain. Weather-beaten didn't dare to tell everyone about this situation. If everyone knew that their hope was on such an inexplicable guy who suddenly appeared out of nowhere, it was estimated that half of the 31 people would withdraw. Weather-beaten shouldered everything by himself. Even if they didn't meet this person, they could dawdle and find the way by themselves. Looking at the situation of the assassination in Cloud City, at least this matter was still continuing, and they could still wait and see. He really didn't want to give up like this. Thinking about it was very heaven-defying, especially when Qianli got drunk, he wanted to grit his teeth. After being released from prison, Weather-beaten saw the priest at a glance and he let out a long sigh. But was this a trap? Weather-beaten was still a bit uncertain. That was why he took this task on himself. Even if it was a trap, he would be one of them. He was ready to go all out. Otherwise, if everyone had followed this fellow here, he would have encircled everyone in one circle. He really wouldn't be able to explain himself to everyone who had gone through so much hardship. Are you interested in the second option I mentioned? Weather-beaten's attitude changed after being released from prison. In the beginning, he didn't like to care about him in prison. Yi Xiaowu saw hope and was quite happy. It wasn't that he didn't have any desires. He was even more eager to be in harmony and get drunk. Wherever there was a chance, there would be his shadow. Where is the second path? Weather-beaten asked. Do you have a map? Yi Xiaowu asked. Weather-beaten shook his head. The coordinates are XXX, XXX. Yi Xiaowu said. Weather-beaten obviously didn't know where it was. Even if someone came to Cloud City, they wouldn't know. Take me there. Weather-beaten said. Now? Yes. Both of us? No. We can go take a look, but we can't leave. We need more people because it isn't easy to go there. Yi Xiaowu said. What do you mean? Weather-beaten was instantly alert. It was just a path. Even if it wasn't easy, what could more people solve? It was as if he was trying to trick a few more people into going to their deaths. If it was the stage where everyone was level 60, this path wouldn't be a secret. Yi Xiaowu said. Weather-beaten suddenly came to a realization. You're saying that this path passes through the level 60 training area? Yi Xiaowu nodded. That's why no one knows. It's not that players can't go to the level 60 training area, but it's too difficult to pass through it alive. Weatherbeaten understood. If that was the case, then there really was a need for more people. If there were enough players, then it wasn't impossible to pass through the level 60 area. Although level 60 monsters were 20 levels higher than the current players, ants could bite an elephant to death. If everyone piled up their meager damage, they could still kill level 60 monsters. In the beginning, there were many gold farming groups that had the idea of killing high-level monsters. They didn't want experience, they just wanted to drop high-level equipment and sell it for money. However, they later discovered that this business wasn't that good. First, they had to kill monsters that were higher level than them, so they needed a lot of people. Once there were more people, the money split between everyone would be less. Even if the equipment they got was more valuable, it wouldn't be much. More importantly, the method of getting rich by dropping equipment depended on luck. It wasn't like killing level 60 monsters would drop a ground full of level 60 equipment for you to use. If your luck was too bad, it was normal to lose everything in one night. Killing monsters to drop equipment for money was no different from buying the lottery and hoping for a big prize. The truly stable method of farming was to find a map that they could easily solo and rely on selling materials that were in high demand to earn money. Therefore, it wasn't that level 60 monsters were too high to kill. It was just that killing them took a lot of effort. Now that Frost and the others had gathered the elite strength of 31 cities, it was completely possible for them to push their way through a level 60 training area. I'll go with you to take a look first. Although he said that, Frost was still afraid that it was a trap. Sure. Yi Xiaowu grabbed a scroll and prepared to use it. Frost didn't hold back. The two teleported to Cloud City's neighbor, Night Moon City. Come with me. Yi Xiaowu brought Frost with him. Both of them had short legs, and they slowly walked towards Cloud City. Along the way, the levels of the players and monsters gradually increased, and the number of people gradually decreased. Frost became more and more convinced. At this moment, the monster in front of them was already a question mark with identify. Identifying a monster was different from identifying a player. If the player was 1 level higher, it would fail, but if the monster was 5 levels higher, it wouldn't be a problem. The monster in front of them was already a question mark. It was clearly above level 45. Should we continue? Yi Xiaowu asked. Frost looked around. There were still players leveling up and fighting monsters here, and most of them were solo leveling. This surprised Frost quite a bit. Fighting monsters above level was actually so common in Night Moon City. As expected of the main city with the toughest people. The players' combat quality was really high. The two of them didn't encounter any monsters along the way, mostly because the leveling players were constantly clearing them. They thought that they would have to be careful and avoid monsters when they were above level 45, but they were still being killed in waves. Yi Xiaowu looked at the lively scene in front of him, but his face was full of melancholy. When he heard Frost exclaim that the players of Night Moon City were amazing, he shook his head and said, "Efficiency leveling, haven't you heard of it?" Efficiency leveling? Frost froze when he heard this. Is it that thing that Drunk Qianli and the others came up with? Yi Xiaowu nodded. Didn't they do it in that city once and then there was no more news about it? Frost asked. I don't know the specifics. Night Moon City actually has such a large-scale efficiency leveling method. I don't know when they got it, these guys. Frostbite didn't take a closer look before, but now that he saw it, the solo players were all melee fighters, and even the mages were all melee fighters. Their killing speed was worthy of the word efficiency. Any player who saw this scene would be tempted. Frost couldn't help but want to secretly learn a thing or two. Suddenly, someone shouted, "Where are you two from?" Frost and Yi Xiaowu looked at each other and pointed to the front. We're just passing by. Go there. The players of Night Moon City obviously knew where they were and were immediately shocked. You're going there, yes. The two of them nodded. Then, the players of Night Moon City looked at each other in bewilderment. To be able to solo monsters above level, one must have an efficiency leveling method. Did these two guys have a higher efficiency leveling method? Someone had already cast identification on them, and they were even more dumbfounded after the appraisal. The mage was great. Although his level wasn't high, his equipment was beautiful. But what about the cleric? With such a trashy level and equipment, how could such a shitty fellow appear in such a high-class place? Are we still going? Yi Xiaowu asked Frost and Frost and Frost. Frost and Frost and Frost's mind was a little adrift. Efficiency leveling method? Chapter 906. Weathered Frost was also an expert. He quickly saw that the speed at which these leveling players killed a small monster was extraordinary. Although they weren't much faster than him, Weathered Frost understood that he relied on his gorgeous equipment to kill monsters quickly, while these people relied on their fighting skills to increase their fighting speed. Such an efficient leveling method had actually nullified the leveling speed advantage that expert players had gained by relying on high-end equipment. This situation left a bitter taste in Frostlord's mouth. Moreover, he also discovered that these fighting methods weren't very useful to him. With his equipment that was much higher than the average players by a large margin, even if he used these techniques, there wouldn't be much substantial improvement. What's wrong? Yi Xiaowu found that Weathered Frost seemed to be very concerned about the efficient leveling method and casually asked. If it weren't for this leveling method, there are too many people here who aren't strong enough to fight the monsters here, Weathered Frost said. That's right. Yi Xiaowu was very depressed. That's why I said that this Qinli always causes trouble in the game when he's drunk. What's the point of having high-level equipment like this? However, as soon as the words left his mouth, he suddenly realized that high-grade equipment wasn't meaningless. With high-grade equipment and a high-efficiency leveling method, he would be able to challenge even higher leveling areas. The use of high-grade equipment wouldn't be erased in the end. The efficient leveling method was something worth paying attention to. Weathered Frost understood that they had already fallen out with very overpowered. Under normal circumstances, they definitely wouldn't be able to obtain this leveling method, but there were still many ways to obtain it. Just like now, after standing here and watching for a while, he more or less understood the knack. Weathered Frost understood the knack, but the players who were leveling up weren't having it. These two people said that they were passing by, but they stood there for a long time without leaving. A player who seemed to be a leader walked over with a displeased expression. You two, if you're passing by, please leave quickly. Weathered Frost was startled, but he quickly understood their intentions. These people wanted the efficient leveling method to be their private secret technique, so they didn't want others to peek and learn it. If they dawdled here, it was very likely that they would have to hand over their weapons. Being well versed in hardships, he was also very tactful. He hurriedly said goodbye to Yi Xiaowu and continued to move forward. Among the leveling crowd, many players were signaling each other with their eyes. Soon, someone secretly followed them. As the area changed, the number of players decreased. Previously, there were level 44 and level 45 monsters among the monsters. Now, however, they were all question marks. The types of monsters had also changed. It was obvious that this was a brand new leveling area. Meanwhile, the number of players grinding here had significantly decreased. Through Weathered Frost's careful observation, he noted that only team players were capable of leveling here. Moreover, grinding monsters was no longer an efficient way to level up. Instead, they had to rely on the team's focus fire. With fewer players, there would naturally be more monsters in the leveling area, making it much more difficult to avoid them. But when he followed behind Yi Xiaowu, he didn't even touch a single monster along the way as he moved forward in a zigzag manner. After paying attention, Weathered Frost quickly discovered that this trash cleric seemed to have a good understanding of the movement range and aggro distance of these high-level monsters. This was why Weathered Frost was able to lead Weathered Frost this far without any problems. This made Weathered Frost feel somewhat incredulous. How could such a low-level cleric be so familiar with the high-level area? Weathered Frost was also an expert in killing monsters above his level. However, even if he thought that this guy could avoid all the monsters in the high-level area, he definitely wouldn't be so confident. Just like this, the cleric finally stopped. After looking ahead, he turned his head and said to Weathered Frost, "This is as far as we can go. If we continue to avoid moving forward like this, I'm not confident that nothing will go wrong." "What level are the monsters here?" Weathered Frost asked. "Around level 52. Yi Xiaowu replied. Weather-beaten Frost estimated that this place was above level 50, because the types of monsters were clearly changing. "Along the way, I think you can see that we're continuously heading towards the high-level area, right? From here on out, we'll probably have to kill our way through," Yi Xiaowu said. "After passing through the level 60 area, we'll reach Cloud City." Weathered Frost suddenly became vigilant. If everyone fought their way through the level 60 area, what if they reached the level 70 area? Fighting monsters 30 levels above them wouldn't be enough even if they had a lot of people. If they weren't careful, the other side might either set up an ambush or try to lure them into a group of level 70 monsters. When that happened, they would be completely annihilated and they wouldn't even have a single PK point. After that, we'll reach the Cloud City area. Yi Xiaowu nodded. The two of them had a smooth journey and walked for more than an hour. Then what about the level 70 training area? Where is it? Weathered Frost didn't hide his suspicions and directly said it. He hoped that the other side could give him an explanation. Level 70. Then it's over there. Yi Xiaowu was still pointing when he suddenly realized that Weathered Frost didn't ask this question for this answer. He immediately laughed and said, "You're afraid that it'll be level 70 after this? No problem, we can try to walk through Cloud City again. Remember the coordinates of your current position. I think that when the time comes, you should be able to determine if there's a level 70 training area between the two coordinates, right?" This method wasn't bad, but Weathered Frost was still worried that the other side was pretending to be calm and bluffing. He immediately nodded, "Okay, let's go to Cloud City." Yi Xiaowu was helpless and rummaged through his bag to pull out another scroll. Weathered Frost saw that this trash cleric was actually a rich person. He didn't feel any heartache for using up one scroll after another. The two of them disappeared in a flash. The two of them had no idea that there were quite a few Moonlit Night City players following them. These Moonlit Night City players were originally from the 10 Guilds Alliance. At that time, Cloud Twilight had relied on his relationship with Sword Demon and Gu Fei to popularize a set of efficient leveling methods. Now that Cloud Twilight was gone and the 10 Guilds Alliance had disbanded, this efficient leveling method had been popularized throughout the guilds. The various guilds that had split off from the 10 Guilds Alliance were now training here. Everyone had a tacit understanding and worked together to protect this hard-earned efficient leveling method. This time, seeing that these two were actually heading towards the high-level area, the various guilds thought that these two had an even better efficient leveling method. They each sent a thief to spy on them. The thief wouldn't be able to keep up if they were in stealth. However, Weathered Frost and Yi Xiaowu avoided monsters along the way. Their speed wasn't fast, so the thief was able to keep up. However, when they arrived at this place, they didn't show any efficient leveling method. After chatting for a bit, they teleported away. "Fuck, these two are crazy." The thief in stealth spoke in the air and was immediately echoed by a bunch of people in the air. "Fuck, they walked so far. What the hell?" The thief brothers had worked hard to follow them for more than an hour, but in the end, they were left hanging here. They felt it was unfair. Let's go back. Someone removed stealth and prepared to go back to level as quickly as possible. In the end, a tragedy happened. In stealth, thieves could greatly reduce the chances of being discovered by monsters. At the very least, the aggro distance of the monsters would definitely be reduced by a lot. So, Although they didn't exactly copy Yi Xiaowu's route, stealth allowed them to get closer to the monsters. However, as soon as they appeared and took a few steps back, the level 50 monster immediately revealed a sinister expression, called out to its friends, and pounced on them. Some of the more meticulous players realized that this was a high-level area and didn't even have time to warn them. Once the monster got too close, stealth would be useless. There was still a level difference. The pitiful tailing party was completely annihilated just like that. They didn't even have the chance to argue. Weathered through hardships followed Yi Xiaowu to Cloud City. He immediately changed into this luxurious outfit and went out into the streets in plain clothes. He repeated the previous 2 hours of sightseeing and sightseeing areas. In the end, he stopped at roughly the same level. At this point, Weathered through hardships no longer had any doubts. The distance between the two coordinates couldn't accommodate another large leveling area. Even if there really was a level 70 area, it would definitely be very small and nothing to worry about. Now you can finally completely believe me, right? Yi Xiaowu sighed. Just for this matter, he went back and forth for n hours. Thank you, but I still want to know why you're helping us. Weathered through hardships said. Once Qinli is drunk. As long as it's a plan to defeat him, I welcome anyone to contact me at any time. Yi Xiaowu said. Oh. Weathered through hardships was like many others. At this time, he immediately thought that Yi Xiaowu, a trash cleric, was definitely killed by Qinli. The problem of the second route was really solved. Weathered through hardships felt comfortable all over. And during these several hours of rushing, he didn't idle. On one hand, he called his friends to inform them in advance that they might help him with an expedition, and on the other hand, he also learned about the work progress of other big shots. The assassination group had been formed yesterday. At this time, they had already infiltrated into Cloud City. The scrolls were all bought from Ming Chi's studio. This time, there really weren't any mistakes. The various assassination groups that arrived in Cloud City were still very safe. They were really very safe. They had already been in Cloud City for more than 3 hours, and there still hadn't been a single battle. The two eyes that Ian Sandpaper contacted recognized people. Following them everywhere was very tiring. Taverns, trading area, auction house, leveling area, guild building, vocational school, warehouse. They had gone through all the places where people gathered, but they didn't see a single person who was very OP. These two eyes friend list also had some very OP people. According to the two of them, none of them were online. The assassins didn't believe this. Could it be that the very OP people were really not online right now? In reality, the very OP people were not online. When they went offline to sleep yesterday, they were very OP free. Now that they woke up, the very OP people were all resting in bed. The assassination group ran around looking for a bunch of people who were not online. They kept wearing down their high morale. Each and every one of them laid in the tavern listlessly. They didn't want to go out anymore. You push me, I push you. Their mantra was, you go find people, I'll do the killing. What about recruiting more helpers? How is it? Weathered through hardships asked. Everyone is contacting each other. I've also called on my side. I can't specifically count the number of people. But this matter isn't urgent. Don't you want to observe the results of the assassination? How's the second route on your side? Low Temperature asked. No problem. This problem was solved, and Weathered through hardships felt refreshed. Oh. It's a little troublesome. This route has to go through the high-level leveling area. Weathered through hardships said. What level? Level 60. Oh, then if we have more people, we can deal with it. Low Temperature said. Hee, to be honest, I don't even want to do the assassination anymore. Everyone gather people. Gather 10,000 people and Qinli will attack Cloud City. Cool. Weathered through hardships said. The assassination isn't going well. The very OP people aren't here. Everyone has been busy for 3 hours and we're getting a little impatient. Looking for people to kill from day to night, especially from a city with hundreds of thousands of people. It's really hard. Sandpaper wants to divide the people into groups. Everyone will take turns and wait for a chance to strike. Low Temperature said. Oh. Then where? Weathered Through Hardships said. The city gates. There are only 4 gates. If most people want to go out to level, then there's only one gate. It's a place you have to pass through. Low Temperature said. I'm just afraid that the other side wants to do the same. Weathered Through Hardships said. That's right. I feel like our movements have been completely seen through by the other side. They're always ahead of us and every time they set up a trap. Low Temperature said. There's an expert. Weathered Through Hardships said. Who could it be? Low Temperature said. It doesn't matter who it is. This kind of person, so what if he's level 0? Unless you can pull out his internet cable. Weathered Through Hardships said. Based on what you're saying, guarding the city gates won't be effective. Low Temperature said. Let's see. If the one guarding is drunk Chinli, then what else is there to say? Weathered Through Hardships said. Weathered Through Hardships finally guessed the enemy's plan. Sandpaper divided the assassins into groups. A small group of people were left to hide at the city gates. The others could do whatever they wanted. These people were all visitors from outside the city. Even if they met face to face, they wouldn't be able to recognize them. They waited and waited. Chapter 907. Gu Fei couldn't completely ignore Slender Waist Dance. Seeing the situation, he immediately nudged her and pouted in that direction. There was originally a row of players' stalls over there, but now there were a few scattered players packing up and preparing to leave. Gu Fei was sure that this was a heaven-defying ambush. Of course, it was a bit rash. He was only suspicious of those who were currently moving. However, Slender Waist Dance was more direct. Gu Fei pointed and immediately pointed at the people who were packing up. Hey, you guys, stop. They had been paying attention to this side. Otherwise, Gu Fei wouldn't have paid attention to them. When they heard Slender Waist Dance's shout, they panicked. They didn't even pack up properly and ran. Seeing this, Slender Waist Dance was even more certain of her judgment and ran. Gu Fei felt that this didn't mean anything. With Slender Waist Dance's bluff, 9 out of 10 people would panic. Stop, I'm talking to you. Why are you still running? I'm going to kill you. Slender Waist Dance chased and threatened. The other person ran even faster. However, no matter how fast he was, he couldn't be faster than Slender Waist Dance. He didn't run far before she caught up. Slender Waist Dance stabbed him. Seeing that he couldn't run anymore, he didn't want to die for nothing. He immediately pulled out his sword and slashed at Slender Waist Dance. The two of them started fighting. Slender Waist Dance's shout alerted the enemy. The other party immediately scattered. The other party was an agility class. Gu Fei and Slender Waist Dance were just 2 people. At most, they could each chase 1 person. Slender Waist Dance successfully caught up. Gu Fei relied on his powerful teleportation to catch up and overturn the other party. What are you doing? Gu Fei asked. He didn't want to kill normal players by mistake. Setting up a stall, the other party replied with a trembling voice. Gu Fei looked and realized that his question wasn't up to standard. Would the other party say, I'm your enemy, come and kill me? Slender Waist Dance laughed as she ran over. The guy she had caught up to had already been taken care of by her. Gu Fei was about to criticize her for being sloppy, but Slim Waist Dance had already despised him. What are you asking? How can you ask like that? Gu Fei was stunned, but Slim Waist Dance had already pushed him away. Move aside, let me do it. Where is Arabato? Slim Waist Dance asked, staring at the player. What's that? Gu Fei didn't hear it clearly, and that guy was even more confused. Slender Waist Dance sneered, you don't even know that? You must be a foreigner. With that said, she was ready to use her knife. The player's face was filled with despair. He had no intention of defending himself. Slender Waist Dance raised his hand, and with a swing of his blade, he was dealt with without any suspense. When he looked at the others, they had already disappeared without a trace. Gu Fei asked Slim Waist Dance, what did you just say? I pretended to ask a question that all Cloud City players should know to test his reaction. Look at him, you can tell he's not from Cloud City, so he definitely isn't a good person. Slim Waist Dance said. When Gu Fei heard this, he felt that this little trick made sense. However, he said, something that only Cloud City players know, you don't have to make it up, right? There should be something like that, right? How would I know? I'm not from Cloud City. Slim Waist Dance rolled her eyes. What would a native like you know? Gu Fei thought about it, but he couldn't think of a reason. This kind of thing that the players of the main city knew but outsiders didn't usually had to be found in the main city's most memorable must-do quests. The problem was that Gu Fei wasn't a quest junkie. In his mind, the must-do quests were wanted quests, so he really couldn't think of a question like this. The other brats ran pretty fast. Slim Waist Dance looked around, and the others were nowhere to be seen. Yeah. Gu Fei replied and returned to the city gate. They all ran, why are they still here? Slim Waist Dance was puzzled. What if that's what they want you to think? Gu Fei laughed. Playing mind games. But it does make sense. Slim Waist Dance nodded and continued to pose with her hands on her waist beside Gu Fei. Sandpaper and the others had tears streaming down their cheeks. Indeed, this was his plan to lure the tiger away from the mountain. He saw that Qianli was drunk, and this plan was targeted at them. Therefore, he managed to convince a few people to retreat, wanting to trick Qianli into thinking that they had left. Who knew that Qianli wouldn't fall for this little trick? After killing 2 people, he stood back up. If this continued, they would be squatting here for nothing. What was worse was that if they had retreated together and sacrificed 2 people, they could have escaped with their lives. But if they moved now, they might lose another 2 people. Gu Fei and Slim Waist Dance's gaze darted left and right. Many of the players who witnessed the scene were shocked. They didn't know what was going on. They only saw a few people pack up and leave, but these 2 people chased after them and killed them. What was the meaning of this? The players who were setting up stalls weren't allowed to leave today. They were going to be looked at to their heart's content. The players who were setting up stalls were all terrified. There were many people who knew Qianli, and many who had heard of Slim Waist Dance. These 2 were people that even big guilds had to think twice before dealing with. How could these poor businessmen dare to provoke them? At this moment, they all felt like they were sitting on pins and needles, looking at each other, not knowing what to do. After a while, some of the players who had set up the stall raised their hands weakly. Gu Fei saw this action, but he didn't care too much. He looked around and found that the guy was still raising his hand. Even Slim Waist Dance poked him. Hey, look, that guy's arm seems to be cramping. He's been raising it for a long time. Do you want to talk? Gu Fei suddenly realized something. Raising one's hand to talk. He was familiar with this. He was a teacher. Fellow, what do you want? Gu Fei almost went to ask this student what the problem was. Boss Qianli, I'm about to be disconnected from the internet. I have to go offline. Can I leave? After the other person was called out by Gu Fei, he nervously stood up to answer the teacher's question. Sure, why not? Do as you wish. Gu Fei said. The person was overjoyed. He packed up and was about to leave when Slim Waist Dance suddenly shouted, "Wait!" Ah! The person trembled. Everyone else's heart skipped a beat. Slim Waist Dance quickly walked in front of him. She pulled out a dagger and stared at him. Question. Ah! The person was so close to the beauty, but he wasn't in the mood to appreciate her beauty. Where is Arabato? Slim Waist Dance asked in a serious tone. The other person panicked. Could it be that the reason those two died was because they answered this question incorrectly? What was the meaning behind this question? Who the hell was Arubator? The person was so anxious that he was about to cry. Answer honestly. Slim Waist Dance said. You don't know. Why don't you know? Slim Waist Dance asked. I don't know, I really don't know. The other person was about to collapse. Okay, you can go. Slim Waist Dance's answer surprised him. He thought he had heard incorrectly. What? Go. Slim Waist Dance was no longer paying attention to him. The person was stunned. He turned his head back every 3 steps and left. He really couldn't figure out the meaning of this question. He didn't know what kind of answer the two who were killed gave. At this time, Slim Waist Dance had already returned to Gu Fei's side. How was it? Gu Fei didn't think much of it. He felt that under Slim Waist Dance's threat, too many people would fearfully give an answer of, I don't know. What effect could this have? If he wanted to use this method, he would have to find a reliable question. With this thought, Gu Fei quickly contacted Brother Yu. This kind of thing was too easy for Brother Yu. He quickly provided Gu Fei with a few answers that players who trained in Cloud City couldn't not know. Gu Fei received it and looked at it. There were a total of 5 questions. He couldn't answer any of them. Sandpaper and the others, who hadn't found a chance to retreat, were also facing a great enemy. They saw this scene one after another. Sandpaper immediately came to a conclusion. Qinli was drunk and didn't recognize them, so he was using some kind of question to verify his identity. This person was afraid that his accent was wrong, so he said each word clearly. I don't know. It can't be. I really don't know. What's there to lie about? The other person didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The player who asked the question was confused. He turned around and spread his hands at Sandpaper. What's the situation? I don't know either. You don't know? Yes, I don't know. Sandpaper was thinking. After a while, he sneered. Fuck, so it was a test. Sandpaper said, this was a made-up question, but when we heard it, we thought it was a test. In the end, we couldn't pass it, so we gave ourselves away. Murderous intent, Heartblade, that's what the two of you thought when you heard the question, right? Yes. The two of them answered in a muffled voice. People who had just lost a level wouldn't be in a good mood. That's why. Sandpaper smiled and raised his hand confidently like the guy from before. Gu Fei and Slim Waist Dance quickly saw it. This time, they didn't hesitate and immediately walked over. Excuse me, I want to leave, is that okay? Sandpaper smiled and acted naturally. He wasn't nervous at all. His subordinates worshipped him. Wait, I have a question. Slim Waist Dance said. Question. Sandpaper pretended to be confused. What is the level to trigger the Full Ice Power quest issued by NPC Josh on East Fu Road? Slim Waist Dance asked. Sandpaper's fake blankness turned into real blankness. The confident smile hidden under the blankness quickly stiffened, and stiffened. What did you say? Sandpaper forced himself to ask. What is the level to trigger the Full Ice Power quest? Slim Waist Dance repeated. I'm sorry, I don't think I've done this quest before, so I'm not too sure. Sandpaper said. Oh. Gu Fei and Slim Waist Dance raised their eyebrows. According to Brother Yu, if a Cloud City player didn't know any of these 5 questions, then he was definitely an idiot among rookies. Gu Fei almost exploded, but this time brother, you didn't make a mistake. He quickly added that people like Gu Fei, who had a different gaming philosophy than normal players, were not included. An idiot among rookies? The two of them muttered to themselves. They didn't come to a conclusion too early, or else they wouldn't have prepared 5 questions. Next. Slim Waist Dance said. Arabato, 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 arabato. Sandpaper chanted in his heart. How much is the Flower Street vendor Lock Amon's silk wrist guard? Slim Waist Dance asked. Ah, this. I've never used this equipment before, so I'm not too sure. Sandpaper's forehead was about to break out in sweat. He even noticed that the surrounding players who heard the question were looking at him with a strange gaze. It was clearly a gaze that looked at an idiot. Wooden Sugar Street crippled old man, what's the requirement for the water used to make tea? Slim Waist Dance directly asked the third question.